No problem at all. Did you get a chance to have a look at the version of this that's on Amazon Prime?
They've been showing a lot of. I've been watching clips of it all week long. They've been showing Sarah did something and somebody else did something, and they're going back to the scenes that we did with Donner, and with the Donner cut, and it's which I think are much better, to be honest with you. But the Donner cut was a lot better than. I mean, Lester, Lester. The Superman 2 that they theatrically released at first was a good movie, but it had a lot more comedy in it than Richards did. Richards was a bit more serious, and we had shot the ending with Donner, where we got locked up. They put us in police cars. We lost our power, and they put us in a police car and took us off to prison.
Yeah,
which they didn't have that in the Lester cut. They just had us falling into the fog.
Yeah, that's right.
But we actually had an outcome which could have left for Superman 3 or 4 to be done differently.
They
had arranged to do 10 of these originally. And when we saw Lester coming on the set, we knew something was amiss. And I actually, Christopher should have stood up and said, "No Donner, no me."
Yeah.
And the Lester thing would have never happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was all about, they didn't want to pay Donner the points, and they didn't want to pay him. And and Lester, they owed a picture to, and he was a lot cheaper, And he was, but he was like night and day director. Compared, Donner was just such a great director. It was just unbelievable. Christopher should have stood up for sure, because Donner got a performance out of Christopher that he would have never given before. I mean,
that's true.
That was all Richard Donner, because before Superman, the only thing Christopher ever did was a soapbox, or he did a play with Captain Hipper, and we stood there holding a spear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So his first real film exposure was Superman, and Richard got a performance out of him, and I will say this categorically: there'll never be another Superman Clark Kent like Christopher. He did the transition from Superman to Clark Kent, so it was wonderful. It was just it just worked so well.
Yeah,
and that was Richard Donner. I remember when they first. I mean, they had interviewed so many people to do Superman, and some of them were really a joke. I mean, that they were thinking of celebrities that no way fit the bill, But I mean, Christopher was only like 172 pounds when he came on the set the first time, and the guy that did Darth Vader was a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
And they were going to put weight on Christopher. And I said, you don't want to bulk him up. You want to make his body creative, like Steve Reeves, who was Mr. America. He was cut and defined perfectly.
Yeah.
And he only weighed like 195 pounds. I said, and so you put 20 pounds on him, but let's put definition to it, because Chris has got an ego and he wouldn't want to wear a plate under his uniform or any of that jazz, Yeah. Give him a body structure that he can be comfortable with, where the suit fits him well and they will look good.
Yeah.
And that's what they did, and they built him, they sculpted him more, and he looked terrific as Superman. As Clark Kent, he looked, I thought he made the transition extremely well.
Oh, he did.
It worked so well for the picture; it just was amazing.
Yeah, that's right. I think we're just waiting for a couple more people to join us, Jack, and then we can get started. So
okay,
people to come on. What time is it? Just a couple of minutes shy of the advertised time, so get there in a second.
How big an audience you showing this to?
We've got 15 people live, well, including couples. Well, 15, and then they've got partners, so maybe an audience of sort of 20, 25. And then we've got a lot of people who want to watch it on YouTube later, because obviously being summer, lots of people are out and about and things. My Superman events tend to get 200 to 300 views, so, and obviously counting. So it's a nice size audience. It's not a huge audience, but it's just a nice, comfortable.
Are we going to sit and watch the whole film?
Yeah, if you're game for that.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Fine.
I would recommend, Jack, if you do get a chance to go on Amazon Prime and watch the Donna cut they have on there, that's about 6 minutes longer than the one on the DVD and Blu-ray.
Yeah, that's what I was watching the other day. I saw it was, Dick, God bless him, man. Like he had shot 85% of the film. In fact, we had to stop shooting 2 because they needed to deliver 1.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever heard that story, but they, we were so hung up doing 2 that they had to go back to finish 1 for delivery. And Warner Brothers came in very cocky and said, well, maybe we won't give you a pickup deal for 2. And Alexander said, oh, does that mean I can bring other distributors in and show them the footage? And Warner's being, a little bit snotty, said, oh yeah, for sure, no problem. And I was at the screening room in Pinewood when he did this. And they brought all these distributors in, and Alexander showed the fight scene from 2.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers couldn't get the rubber bands off their money fast enough. And he got them for another $5 million for 1, even though it was a little bit late distributed. He said, well, we have a cost factor here. He scammed them out of another $5 million. It was, that was funny. I laughed my ass off. I never forget sitting in that screening room watching these guys scurry. Well, wait a minute, Alexander. Hold on a second. We have right of first refusal here. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, my God. And that's what he just showed them the fight scene because it was so well done. It was just,
it was,
we broke a lot of technology rules, boy.
Yeah.
But you see, Hackman never came back to finish. No. But they had shot most of his stuff. There's only had a couple scenes where you see a stunt guy.
Yeah.
But Gene wouldn't come back, and and I almost didn't go back. But if Christopher wouldn't have went back, I think they would have had no alternative but to keep Donner there.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Had Christopher said no, then.
Oh yeah, I mean they needed Christopher more than anybody else.
Yeah.
If Chris would have turned around and said no, I mean, and even if all of us, if the 3 villains would have stood up and said, you know what, no Donner, forget about it. Well, there were shots they needed. Yeah. All 3 of us. And if they would have had to go back and reshoot everything, would have cost them a fortune.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So people weren't really clearly thinking when that really happened. It's just it was they were notorious. There's no 2 ways about it.
I was wondering because obviously, as you said, Jack, that it was Christopher Reeve's breakout movie, Superman, and obviously he was a star, but he's still a rising star. So maybe if he'd been more established, he might have felt that he had a bit more clout to say, well,
they paid him more money. I know what they did. They sweetened his deal. They sweetened all of our deals. We all got paid a lot more money for 2.
Yeah.
But it was just wasn't the same without Richard Donner, and it would have been so much better. I mean, the Donner cut is a great film. I mean, I don't know if you see the difference between the 2.
Oh, dramatically, yeah. The obviously the tone is much more. It's still a comedy, but it's more serious.
Yeah.
Wow. There's more menace from the villains. And I think particularly your character, it seems to be much more more frightening in Donner version than Lester, because I think Lester makes you a bit more of a comic character.
Yeah,
that's fair to say. But I think we've got everybody that we need. Everybody's joined us. That's great. So I think we'll make a start. So,
Okay.
so if everyone wants to get their copy of Superman 2 Donner Cut to hand, so either DVD, Blu-ray, or on Amazon Prime. If you're watching the Amazon Prime cut, you will notice it's about 6 minutes longer than the DVD and Blu-ray release, but that shouldn't make too much of a difference for our purposes. So if we just pause on the Warner Bros. Opening title, and then we'll press play in a few seconds, and we're all well. Sorry. So if we pause on the opening statement of the film, the following film represents Superman 2 as it originally conceived and intended to be filmed. If we all pause on that, then we can press play from that moment. So I'm just going to say thank you very much to Jack O'Halloran for joining us for this wonderful, what promised to be a wonderful evening watching Superman 2 as it was originally meant to be seen. Mr. O'Halloran's credits include Baltimore Bullet, Farewell My Lovely, King Kong with Jeff Bridges, episodes of Knight Rider, Murder She Wrote, Dionysus Murder. Is there any other credits, Jack, that you'd like to
Dragnet. Dragnet
Oh,
was a great
Dragnet.
film.
Dragnet, yes, that was on the tip of my tongue. So yes, Dragnet, that's a wonderful film. That I think we'll probably touch on some of your credits as we go along on the film, and obviously feel free, everyone in the audience, to put any questions you want Jack to answer. It can be Superman, it can be any part of his career, and I'll try and get as many questions to put to Jack as possible. So if we're all ready to begin, I'll do a little countdown and we'll press play. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. So Jack, when did you first hear that the Donner Cut was going to happen? Because obviously for years there've been petitions and movements.
Well, they kept talking about it, and they kept talking about it. It took 20 some years before he actually got the right to do it.
Yeah.
But from what I understood, he actually, he had control over that footage, and they played with it, and then they took some of the screen tests for Christopher and for Margot to put in the beginning of it, because there were shots that they needed to have. So they used the screen test, and they worked out pretty well,
Yeah,
But,
I think screen test is very, very nicely edited together, isn't it? So it's in the film.
But it was. I was thrilled when they came out with it. I mean, I remember we went to see it, and it was even the Salkinds were thrilled that they came out with it. They were at the screening, and they were. I mean, how could you not be? I mean, and it made Warner's a ton of money.
That's right.
We never got paid another salary, which was kind of a gyp deal. I thought.
Yeah.
We were putting out another film, we should have been paid for it, But it worked really well. I liked the Donner Cut quite a bit.
Oh yeah. I think it's most fans' preferred version of the film, definitely. We had a question come in about what was it like to work with Marlon Brando.
Brando was amazing. Brando and I became very good friends, and we knew some people in New York and stuff. And I remember when I went down, because the first 10 or 11 days were Brando that they filmed, because they needed him on film to get the money.
Yeah.
So when they brought him over, and Robert Mitchum said to me, "Jack, you got to go down and say hello to Brando for me, and just tell him I said hello." And when I went down to the set at the Shepperton, and he was surrounded by newspaper people and stuff, and he saw me, and he broke right through, and he came running over and said, "Hey kid, how you doing?" Blah, blah, blah. And he wanted to meet me as bad as I wanted to meet him, and we became very good friends. I quite liked Marlon. Marlon was like when I worked with Mitchum, and I worked with a few very serious, good actors. When they walked on the set, you could hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
They commanded that kind of respect. It just was. Marlon was an amazing individual. I remember going down to see him film one day. I just went down to watch him, because it's a learning experience watching Brando work.
Yeah.
And he did something I never saw another actor do before. And he had cue cards everywhere. I mean, the cue cards are everywhere. And he was going into a shot, and the camera said, "Oops, wait a minute, we got a noise. We got a problem here." He said, "We're going to have to come back and do this." And Brando just turned around. He said, "Like hell, you fix that camera." And he turned his back to it, and he said, "Tell me when you're ready." And when they said, "Okay," and he turned back into the shot, and he finished the shot. And he come down off the set, and I said to him, "I guess a lot of people be a little nervous asking this, but what the hell? What's with all the cue cards, man?" I said, "Are you that bored with the industry that you got to have cue cards coming out your ears?" "No, no, Jack," he said, "I started that with Mutiny on the Bounty because I didn't want the camera to make it look like I had memorized the script or something." And I looked at, I said, and I laughed. Then he was a great Shakespearean actor. So he sat there and he ripped off a couple parables of Shakespeare. And he said, "This you must know word for word. This shit, piece of cake." So he was just an amazing guy. I mean, he was such a talented man. It was such a pleasure to work with him, for the short time that we even worked with him. But then, he and I hung out off the set afterwards, and we had a lot of fun. Marlon was a unique individual.
Oh yeah, and a brilliant actor, as you say. So obviously one of the real stings with Superman 2 when it was released first of all was of course with Marlon Brando being cut from the film. What was your reaction when you heard?
Oh, that just goes to show you how do you cut Marlon Brando out of a movie?
Yeah,
they didn't want to pay him the points. Now he had already paid him. He got paid. I think it was $4.5 million for 11 days work. So he had already been paid. In fact, that was one of the funnier stories. They were all sitting having dinner one at the Salkinds and Donner and Brando, and they were working maybe 6 days or 7 days or something like that. And they were working long, hard days. And Brando said, "We've really been working, beating this drum pretty steadily here." He said, "Maybe we should take a day off and rest a bit." And Donner said, "Well, Marlon, we probably could." And they're kicking Donner under the table because they knew they had to get him on script, on the film to get the money. And they said, and Pierce Spangler said, "Oh no, Marlon, there's no way we could take a day off. It would cost us too much money." So Brando said, "How much will it cost for a day's filming?" And they said, "Oh God, like $300,000. And Brando looked at him and said, "Well, you know what? Let's take the day off. I'll pay." Oh my God, they had a heart attack. But of course, they never took the day off. He was just joking. But he had that kind of crazy sense of humor. He put them through hell. But how do you cut the guy out of a film? Which just shows you the foolishness,
Yeah. So go on, Jack.
Well, the footage has already been shot. Why would you even want to cut him out, other than the fact that they didn't want to pay him the points?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, obviously from a creative point of view, you're quite right. It's to take Brando out of anything is scandalous.
Well, I mean, that's what makes the Donner cut so much better. You got Brando in there.
Yeah.
Throughout, doing all the scenes he already done. It just gives more validity to the film.
Oh yeah, it does indeed. And again, I think because we're still watching the recap from Superman 1 at the beginning of the Donner cut, and again, that is a much better recap than the original version in Superman 2. And again, you see some new footage and things in there as well, so that's quite nice to have that. So how did you become involved in Superman in the first place, Jack? Did you go through an audition process? How were you spotted?
No, I was doing a film with Gene Hackman called March or Die down in Spain and Morocco. And the crew was, a lot of the crew that were on that film went up and worked on Superman with us. And Donner sent a message down. He wanted to meet he wanted to meet Hackman and I. And they flew us up to London. And he offered me the role, and because they had sent me the script and I read it, and he said to me, "How do you feel about playing a mute guy?" And I said, I got to tell you honestly, I said, I embraced that. I said, I have Jackie Gleason was a good friend of mine, and he did a movie Gigo where he was a deaf dumb mute. He won an Oscar. I said, if I ever get a chance to play a role like that, I would embrace it because it gives me a chance to put my acting skills to be it with expression and body language. And what a perfect character because Zod was a man eater. Sarah was a man eater. Zod was a vicious general, and somebody had to relate to the kids because there's a lot of children in the audience. So I took this big brutish guy and played him like a child. Learning how to work his eyes and with adulation for Zod and it worked very well. I mean, I remember when I went to the very first Comic Cons, people came up to me and people said, "My God, you can actually talk." I said, "I must have really convinced you pretty good." Huh? I said, but no, it worked. I mean, young kids related to the character really big time. They come say, "Well, I loved Zod was the greatest character." It's nice to know that you actually got across what you're trying to do.
Oh yeah, I mean, as you say, for some actors, it would, not having speaking role would be a negative, but for you, you saw it as a challenge and a positive thing, which obviously, and you say it's all about.
Oh, I thought it was a positive right from the get-go. Wow,
Yeah.
I thought it was great. Didn't have to memorize any words. It was terrific.
So how was did Dick Donner give you lots of notes when you were doing the role
I mean he was thrilled that I took the ambitious to play it like a child. I mean, because it gave him as a director, wow, here I am, you got three villains and we're all different, and it gave him an opportunity to add to his directorialship, that he didn't have to sit and labor it with me, and we discussed it, and I just that's the way I did it, and it fit right into what he wanted to do, so it worked extremely well, made his job easier and my job easier.
And how was
I loved working with Donner. Donner was great. He was just a brilliant director.
I mean, I think it's a good time to talk about Dick Donner because obviously he very sadly passed away just a couple of weeks ago. What are your do you have particularly what your favourite memories of Dick Donner?
Like I said, it's amazing how a director you can tell, whether something's really going to work by the way somebody controls the set, And Dick lived, eat, and slept Superman. He and Mankiewicz both.
Yeah.
They just it was their life, boy. I mean, he did the magazines before, and he did them afterwards. And the character Non was actually a brilliant scientist that they lobotomized. That's how he became mute.
Oh, right,
So
yeah.
we went through the whole livelihood of the character, and he allowed you to express yourself.
Yeah.
And he liked the version of the way I took this character on, and working with him and I mean, we had an amazing cast. I mean, Terrence Stamp is a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
I mean, he was one of the finest English actors there were, and Sarah was a budding actress, which she was going to she was a hell of an actress, and she was beautiful. My God, she was gorgeous. And if you really look at all the actors that were playing like the judges of guilty, 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 you're talking about some of the most stalwart actors, Trevor Howard and Harry Andrews. I mean, some great English actors that were on that set. You know what I'm saying? So it gave everybody that feeling of professionalism. I mean, it was just so well coordinated by Donner, and he handled it so well. I mean, God, I have a lot of respect for Richard Donner. He was a terrific director,
I mean,
and a great person.
Because I take you remain friends in the years after the film came out.
Oh yeah, I used to call him all the time. Dick was a fun guy.
And was he at the? Obviously, he probably was. Was he at the screening for the Donner Cuts back in 2006?
Was he at the screening, Dick? Oh
Yeah.
yeah, positively he was there for sure.
And
He orchestrated it. I mean, they only had the Donner Cut only come out because of him. You know,
obviously him and the fans and requesting it and
yeah, and he made a deal with Warner Brothers, and and it was another film for them. Why wouldn't they bring it out? It was crazy not to. Made them a lot of money.
Oh yeah, it was very successful, wasn't it? So how did obviously you mentioned Dick Donner and you're working with Dick. When you're working with Richard Lester, did you find that Richard had a different take on Non? Was that good or bad?
Richard Lester never bothered me. He never came near me that much. I mean, I brought my character to the set, and that satisfied him. He never had to direct me, actually.
Oh well. And you were saying it's a great trio, obviously with Terence Stamp and Sarah Douglas. I take you.
Yeah, and the three of us were in harmony all the time. I mean, it just really worked very well. I mean, and Valerie. I mean, it was just Gene Hackman. That was the second picture in a row that I did with Hackman, so I knew Gene very well. So it worked really good, boy. It was a great chemistry.
Oh yeah.
And when you're working with people for 3 years, I mean, you get to know people pretty well. And, it's just we had a lot of fun on the set, and it was very lighthearted, and it was good.
And what was Gene Hackman like to work with?
Oh, Gene's such a professional. I mean, he's like a stalwart actor. He's Gene does his homework. He knows his character. He knows exactly where he's at and what he's doing. And if you're a director and you don't do your homework, Hackman walks right off the set. I mean, he would. I think that's why he never came back, because he knew what Lester was. Gene was. We did a picture of March or Die, and the director was Dick Richardson. When Gene came on the set, Dick started moving him around, like this, that, and he stopped him. He said, "Whoa, wait a minute." He said, "You do your homework here, son, or what?" He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll be in my trailer. When you get done playing games here, let me know. But I'm not a chess piece that you just keep moving around, if you haven't done your homework, we got a problem here."
Yeah.
And he walked right off the set. And I said, "Wow, look at this. Remind me of Mitchum, But Gene was a methodical actor. And he's very, very good. And again, just a super individual, a really nice guy.
So Robert Mitchum was similar to Gene Hackman in certain respects.
Well, Mitchum was in a world of his own. Robert was probably one of the most well-read men I ever met in my life. And he was my mentor, from the time I did my first picture with him, and he and I became very close. And he was Robert was he was so talented. It was scary.
Yeah.
The presence that he had on the set was unbelievable. And he did that for me. He just, he brought me right down the street, because I never worked in front of a camera before. And I remember that he arranged for them to pick him up, and then they came and picked me up, and we drove to set together in the same car. The first day I ever went to work, and he was telling me funny stories and stuff by the time we got down to set. And I got dressed in my costume, and we were waiting to go on the set for the very first time. And he looked at me and he said, "Read that script, kid?" I said, "Read it. I know your role, Charlotte Rampling's role, Harry Dean Stanton." I said, "I read it cover to cover." He said, "Good, throw it in the trash can." I said, "What?" He said, "Don't let me catch you doing what thousands of people do in this town. Don't let me catch you acting. Just be yourself. Take that character, stick him in you, and walk down the street like you. I said, wow, I had intended to do that anyway. He said, and he said, just be yourself, kid. And he said, we went up in front of the camera for the first time, and he said, see all those people behind the camera there? I said, yeah. He said, when that little red light goes on, they all work for you. You're on celluloid. They can be replaced. So don't ever worry about them. And I said, well, I wasn't about to worry. So, and then he taught me eye lines. He said, just look right through the camera. Don't look at it. Just look right through it. Find an eye line and take it and look at it. He said, let the camera find you. And sure as hell, boy, it worked out really well. And I remember when they did the first setup, and they were changing everything around, lights and stuff. And I looked at him. I said, what's going on here? What's the deal? He said, you really don't know. I said, what am I asking you for? He said, that's it, kid. That's a whole enchilada. I said, wait a minute. That's all there is to this stuff? He said, that's it. I said, shit, man, I'm a star. And that became a tagline of Farewell, My Lovely. But he was, Mitchum was just a very kind, giving. I mean, the first day he got done work, and he was done, and I was doing a pickup shot or something, and then when I got done, I'm saying, "Oh my God, how am I going to get home?" He probably left with the car. How do I get out of here? So I got changed, and I said to the guy, where how do I get out of this place? Oh, right around the corner of transportation. All the cars are over there. Go over there. And I walk over there, and there's Mitchum standing against the car, smoking a cigarette, having a chat with the driver. And I walked up to him. I said, wow, man, I thought you were long gone home. And he said, can't go home without the star. Now, can we? The relationship became very, and Robert was just if Robert Mitchum had steak for lunch, everybody had steak.
Right.
That's the way he was, and he taught me things like, and he and Brando did the same thing, and Hackman did. When it came on the set, you said good morning to everybody, and you said good night when you left, because it's a family, and you have to interface with everybody. I mean, that guy sitting up in the rafters that's doing the shading on you, lighting wise, can make you look like a fool or a monkey. Depending on how you're playing. If you have the courtesy to recognize everybody, and everybody works in harmony.
Oh yeah. Sounds like it's a lovely experience working with both Gene and Robert. That's fantastic advice that he gave you. We're currently watching the moon sequence. The first main appearance of the villains. Do you remember much about shooting that sequence?
Shot that at Pinewood. Yeah, it was. Some of it was shot over at Shepperton, but Pinewood was most of it was shot. And it was kind of trippy. It was like you were walking on the moon, man. It was pretty cool, It's and then when they did the glass thing, we had this big cellophane thing that we had to stand against, to make it look like we were trapped in a glass thing. It was God, there were so many jokes about that. Oh, three of us in this little prison up there, how are you going to go to the bathroom and all that shit, And poor Sarah's trapped with two guys, and oh my God. We had a lot of fun doing it. It was great.
Because obviously there's a great part of this sequence when you crushed the spaceship. Was that technically difficult to do action sequences?
No,
like
I did all my own stunts. I did all my own stunts. I liked doing that. I was very physical. I was an athlete, and so, and I wanted to bring the best of this character out. So I did all the stunts. I did a lot of stunts in the picture. And, it was good. We had a lot of fun.
Because obviously Terence Stamp and Sarah Douglas would have had stunt doubles. So what was it? Was it more difficult to work with their stunt doubles than the actual actors, or did you get used to that quite quickly?
Well, Sarah did most of her stuff, and there
Mm,
was only a few things that somebody else stepped in, and Terrence did a lot of his stuff. So the three of us worked together very well. I mean, I don't ever remember uh, a difficult time,
mm.
to be honest with you.
Oh, good, good. Was it difficult shooting this moon sequence because I believe they had to keep the set quite clear of dust and dirt, and I think they vacuumed in between shots to make it look like it was pristine on the moon. So I imagine that might have made it take longer to shoot the sequence.
Well, it was with the three of us, there was a lot of one takes.
Hmm.
They shot different they pickups and all that stuff. Shooting from different angles, but it worked. We worked in harmony pretty well together. We really, it was amazing how well actually that we did that. And Terrence, like I said, Terrence was a very, very good actor, accomplished actor, and he was very clear-headed. When Terrence was younger, his brother was a manager of the Who,
Oh, right.
which was a famous group. So Terrence was into sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and every woman in England chased him all over the place. He was a good-looking guy, man, and he had that aura about him.
Hmm.
And then he went to India, and he grew, and he got Rolfed, and he went very spiritual.
Yeah.
And that's when they got a hold of him to come to England to do Superman. They offered him Superman while he was in India.
Hmm.
So it was the first picture he ever came back where he was totally straight as an arrow.
Hmm.
He didn't know there was no drug, sex, or rock and roll in him. He was just right down to business, and he just had this. He had a great ability. He reminded me of, like, he and Brando were the same cut, and Brando and he was a very serious actor,
Hmm.
and he took his character on very well. And we talked about it, and the three of us worked in harmony very well. So I don't think there was a misstep in the picture.
Hmm.
I don't think
Um,
we ever had a problem. Three of us.
hmm. Yeah, there's great chemistry on screen, and again, if you weren't working, if the relationship wasn't good off, it would obviously affect the performance. You can tell how well you got on together by the scenes, which obviously are fantastic. Um, I was wondering because we're just watching the escape scene of Jean and Ned Beatty from prison. Do you remember Ned at all?
Yeah, I thought it was very cleverly done. To be honest with you, I thought it was. I mean, it was. It left. It opened the door for us to do another Superman. And why they never picked that up and followed it really drove me crazy. I just thought that was, very foolish of their side. And to then Lester directed three, and they brought Pryor in. And Richard's a great actor, but it was took away from. He became the main focus more than Superman.
Yeah, yeah, that's
You
right.
know,
I mean, there was
and
a very good deleted scene that was supposed to happen maybe the last couple of scenes of this film, and it was Gene Hackman and Ned Beatty being broken out of jail with the help of Miss Tessmacher, and of course that ended up on the cutting room floor. So there was definitely a setup for them to come back in three or four and to go on. So
oh yeah, and we've even in fact I've got a script, that a storyline that I would, if we can get Warner Brothers on board when they get settled down after being bought by a corporation, that to bring the villains back and to bring Christopher back in a hologram,
mhm,
and and while we're in jail, we get extracted by another planet that's
yeah,
a sister planet to Krypton,
hmm,
and they have a technology much more superior than Krypton did for moving through space and time and everything.
hmm,
And they come into the jail and they change our personalities. And we become cohorts of Superman
hmm.
because of all these other planets all of a sudden invading Earth. We put this great storyline together where we join forces with Superman. Now he's got his own little army.
Well, that sounds really good. Yeah.
Oh, it's a brilliant, brilliant concept that would work extremely well. And to bring Christopher back on screen, my God, people would go crazy.
Because I think obviously with there's lots of possibilities obviously with animation and all different things you could sort of do, and I think they've just started a comic book series, of literally a paper comic book about the Christopher Reeve Superman, continuing the story. I think it's called Superman 78, and it's more stories with Christopher Reeve in the character, and albeit in comic book form. So things like animations you could possibly do, and
Oh, I think it would be brilliant. I just, I think if we can talk them into it, I think it would do the audience, the Superman. There's such a great following worldwide, I think it would just would light everybody up to see Christopher back on screen, but to see Christopher with the three villains all on the same team fighting against other villains from other places would be, I think, phenomenal. And of course, when they're converting everybody over, Non would, of course, have his lobotomy reversed, and he would be able to say, "Zod, kneel before Non." Joke.
I mean, the possibilities, as you say, possibilities are endless, aren't they, really? And there's such a fan following for these films in particular. Obviously, there's been other TV series and other films, but none of them have captured the magic that these.
Well, I think 1 and 2 are the best they did. I mean, and again, that's Donner. The technology, we broke so many technology rules. I mean, we shot, like they're doing today, they have a technology called LED on LED. And we actually did that VistaVision on VistaVision.
Yeah.
And we did the fight scene. The reason why it looked so great, because you saw no wires or anything. We flew under bridges, around buildings, and doing the fight scene up in the sky and all. And it was because we had a huge 70-foot screen with 3 pole arms that come out with body molds that we laid in, and which enabled us to move different flying shots. And they shot us into the movie. They shot the movie was behind us on the screen. They filmed us right into the movie. It was long and tedious doing it, but it worked so well. I mean, it just looked brilliant on screen.
Because a lot of that was down to Zoran Persic, wasn't it? Who came up with Zoptics and that sort of, as you the techniques that you were describing just then. So, did the technology change a lot from when you did Superman 1, and obviously you had the gap until you came back to do Superman 2?
Well, we did Superman 1 and 2 together. We shot, like I said, Dave, we had shot 86%. Donner had shot 86% of Superman 2. But when they brought Lester on, in order for a director to take credit as being a director of a film, he has to shoot better than 50% of the film.
Yeah.
So he had to go back and reshoot some scenes to make it, to put his name on it. You understand?
Yeah.
And Don and Lester was he did things that Donner would have never done. Like didn't when they did the Eiffel Tower thing. If you look at the film, you'll see it was a rainy day that day. It was raining. And if you look at when Margot Kidder's being stopped by the policeman, you see spots hitting his shirt. And if you look behind him, the car behind him, the windshield wipers going crazy. But yet it looked like a sunny day. Because all Lester did was open the lens and went back into the laboratory and just made it look like a sunshine day, He eradicated the rain.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of that. That's I mean, he could have very well waited a day or so and shot in the sun and come up with a much better, but that was Richard Lester. He did what he did, It's just he worked a lot of magic in the laboratory.
Yeah, because I think Richard Lester has a reputation for being a very economical director, being very fast working, always coming in on time or under budget. So he was quite efficient from your point.
Well, he would just shoot a lot of shots and then he would go in the laboratory and fix everything. Where Donner was right on the money with stuff. And it just And I don't think Donner really overspent. I mean, he wasn't like a Spielberg or anybody. Dick was just methodical about making the movie and making the best Superman movie. I mean, you got to understand, Superman was the very first superhero movie of America.
Yeah.
You know, and when they did it, what we did in Superman was we didn't go around killing everybody. They were locking people up and going by the all-American way of putting them in jail and stuff. Much different than the way that the Superman's got darker and darker and darker.
Yeah.
Of killing people and all this other stuff. You never saw Christopher running around killing people.
No.
Which made it a much more wholesome way of life for American way of life, you know?
I mean, you obviously we mentioned a bit about the difference between Dick and Richard's directing styles. Would you say that Dick Donner perhaps was more sort of more of had more of an artistic approach, and Richard Lester had more of an idea of the politics of filmmaking, a bit more of the budget, and a bit more of those concerns? Would you say that was it?
Well, I mean, to me, it was like a movie director and a television director.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it was like night and day.
Yeah.
Donner was that much better a director. And if he'd have finished, if they had let him finish 2, 3 would have been much better, and 4 he'd have done 6 or 7 of them, and the franchise would have been so much better.
Yeah.
For it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, Dick Donner had the problem of obviously of having to, everything's being all technology was being invented as they went along. So obviously they had the pressure of trying to work out just how to make the film. And of course, when Richard Lester came on board, that had already been solved. So he must have had
all those problems were solved, is right.
Yeah. So it was much easier for him to stay on budget because it was all worked out.
Absolutely. The flying, the fight scene and everything was all done, you know. It was, like I said, he had shot 86% of the film. That's why the Donner cut came out. 86% of the film was already shot.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, what was I going to say? With Richard Lester, how did he? So it was because obviously most people describe with Dick Donner it's like a family atmosphere while filming, but with Richard Lester it was a bit more sort of, a day-to-day.
Well, it was much more relaxing with Donner. I mean, you knew, he went over everything with you. You knew what we wanted to do, and we did it, and it was. He let you go. He let you create. In other words, like when we went through the Daily Planet, and I walked through those walls and stuff. That's like one take stuff that you're doing. You know what I mean? But he let me. I mean, when I first walked through the wall, they had a stunt guy that put jacks in the wall that were supposed to push the wall out. It had the wall carved, cut so that we'd go out easy and stuff. Well, when I went through the wall, the jack didn't go off. It went off afterwards. It hit me in the arm. And I kept going though. I just did the scene. We turned around and the guy who set the jack, all I could see is the back of him running off the set. He thought I was going to kill him because I get hit in the arm with this jack thing. But when I just walked right through the scene and finished it, and didn't stop and say, "Oh my God, I broke my arm." It was it was a much better, worked out well.
Did you find that because obviously you shot a lot of 1 and 2 together, but obviously then there was a gap in between the premiere of 1 and coming back for 2. Had the technologies at all been refined by the time you got back onto the next phase?
No, I think it was the same. The technology that we used when we shot with 1 and 2 with Donner, we had that already in place. VistaVision on VistaVision was there. I mean, I felt bad for those guys because the Salkinds actually bankrupt them. They had the future in their hands, boy.
Hmm.
I mean, they're doing it with LED now, but they had it with VistaVision or VistaVision. It's called Zorn Zoptic Vision.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
optics, yeah.
and the company went belly up because they just never, they were jerked around so much. It was sad. I felt bad for them, actually.
Oh, that's a shame,
Because
isn't
they had
it?
the right idea. I mean, it was much better than CGI.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Yeah, I mean, what do you think of the more modern Superman films then? Because obviously, as we said, it's already the films that obviously are much darker than the Christopher Reeve films. Do you watch the new stuff? Do you enjoy the new film?
I can't watch some of it. I just, Superman 4 was terrible. It was just, and that was done by Canon Films.
Yes.
It wasn't even a Warner Brother picture.
No.
They got a license from Warner's, and Canon did that picture, and
Mm.
Christopher wrote the script,
Mm.
and the movie was just diabolical. It was just, you could see the difference of doing it with a major studio and doing it with a company like Canon, who pumped out, you know. I did a picture with Chuck Norris, probably one of the best pictures he did, Hero and the Terror,
Oh yes. Hmm.
which made Canon a lot of money. It was probably one of the best things Chuck ever did. Actually, it really worked pretty well. We had a lot of fun doing it.
Did you have much to do with Canon on that film, the producers, or did you not see him at all?
No, I never. I just went and showed up and did my job.
Because I think obviously with the Soul Cons, they always knew how to put the money on the screen. They would spend the money where it needed to go. But obviously, Canon had very much a different approach of that will do. We'll keep it, low budgets, and obviously that's the fate of
Well, they were used to doing low budget movies. How do you make Superman a low budget movie? You just don't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to have certain technologies. You have to do certain things, and it costs money to do them. But it was. I mean, there's a difference. They're making these movies today, and they're spending like 100, $200 million.
Yeah.
We did Superman. I think the first film cost 50 million. If it cost that, and a lot of that was burger. I mean, the picture probably could have been done for like 30.
Mm. Yeah.
But a lot of things got inflated and stuff, and it was, so it was, but it made a lot of money. The picture made a lot of money, and still makes a lot of money. It just continues to make money.
It does, yes. Because a few years ago they released on the TV cuts of Superman, the movie, and I think it's about just over 3 hours, and that sold out when that was released. And I think there's hope that the extended cuts of Superman 2, the TV cuts that came out, will eventually be released as well, which would be good if they did. I'm sure they'd be very popular with all the fans.
Well, it's a great fan base. The fan base is terrific, and if they see Christopher, that's a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
Because the Superman movies that we did weren't dark.
No.
We didn't. We had the wholesome all-American way about it.
Hmm.
It was law and order time. It was catching criminals and doing it the right way.
Hmm.
Even though the villains were crazos.
I mean, do you think that's? I'm going to say a good point, Jack. Do you think that a Superman film like this could be made these days? Is it too much of a different world? Are we too pessimistic?
No, I think if we went back and did it the same way we were doing with the storyline that I said to you, I think that would work extremely well. I think that if you brought all that wholesomeness back into it, you'd make a better film.
Yeah, I think there is a demand for that kind of innocent escapism that Superman.
Well, people want to go to the movies to be entertained, not scared to death.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with Jack, and I think it's such a difficult world these days that you want that escapism, and I think that this kind of Superman film would be very successful these days, definitely.
Oh, I think it would work. I think it would work brilliantly. I really do. I think it would be. I mean, if they brought back and showed like in the Donner Cut when you show the ending of us being carted off to jail, Superman didn't kill us. What he wasn't a murderer.
Yeah.
He just they found a way to take our powers away and take us off to jail, like every other criminal that he caught.
Yeah.
That makes sense to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think with the as you say, it's a different portrayal of the character at a different time, and he is this. He's not a murderer like let's say Batman would have no problem.
Well, the Batman versus Superman picture was so dark. My God.
It was, wasn't it?
And they're killing everybody that walked down the street. Jesus, it's just.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like in the Superman we did. Christopher caught the concrete before it crushed people. Same with Lois and everything else. It was a whole different wholesome. There was a wholesomeness about it. It gave you somebody to really cheer for.
I think that's a very, very good comparison, Jack, comparing the Metropolis Battle in this film to what you see in Man of Steel with Henry Cavill. Very few people are seen to actually die in Superman 2, although no doubt people would have been killed by the battle, but it's not shown on screen. And then of course you've got in the Man of Steel, literally thousands of people are dying in front of the audience.
Yeah, got bumped off, man.
We did have a question, Jack, from Ian, who's watching along. Ian wanted to know how you got into the film business in the first place.
How I what?
How you got into the film industry to begin with.
I was a world-ranked heavyweight fighter in sports, and they came to me in 1967. They did the picture, the Thomas Crown Affair in Boston, and Steve McQueen came into Boston, and we looked after him, took care of him, and he and I became really good friends. And he said, "Oh man, you got to come down. I'm going to put you in this movie, get you your card, SAG card, come back to Hollywood, we'll have a ball." And I said, I was undefeated as a fighter, and I'm looking to fight Muhammad Ali for the title. And I said, "I don't think so." I said, "I don't think that's really for me." He said, "Oh, you'll love it, man, believe me." So I turned it down. And then they came to me in '69 to do a picture called The Great White Hope with James Earl Jones.
All right.
And they thought the deal was done. They thought I was just coming to Fox to sit down and sign the documents. And I had just knocked out the number 2 ranked heavyweight in the world in LA. And I was looking directly down the pipe of the Ali fight. Yeah. And they wanted me to go to Spain for 6 months. And I said, "I don't think so, guys." And they couldn't believe that I passed on it. And, I remember when I was leaving Fox and James Earl Jones was coming up the steps I was going down. And he stopped me and he said, "You're Jack O'Halloran." And I said, "Yeah, and you're James Earl Jones." He said, "I got to ask you a question. Is it true what I just heard about you?" And I said, "Depends on what you heard." He said, "You just told Hollywood to take the biggest movie and stick it." I said, "Well, if you want to put it that way, I guess." He said, "I got to shake your hand. I never met anybody that did that before." Because that was the biggest movie in Hollywood at the time, But and McQueen called me up. "What is wrong with you? What do we got to do to get you out here?" And I laughed. And then he did a picture called Towering Inferno, and his name was Captain O'Halloran. And he called me up on the phone. "How you like your name up on the screen? What can we get you to come out?" And then when I retired from boxing, and they offered me Farewell, My Lovely. And I said, I think it's time that I give this a shot. And I went out and did a screen test, and Mitchum said it's either him or I don't do the movie. So I blamed it all on Robert Mitchum.
So what made you want to end your boxing career?
Well, I suffered from this disease of acromegaly, which, created a bad depression and stuff. And they told me they couldn't even figure out how I even got in the ring. And then I went to Mass General and I had it cured. They hit the tumor and they took it out with a cyclotron proton machine. and I was one of 1,000 that they whacked it out the first time,
Right.
and changed a lot of my molecular structure. So it just I came to a point where you know acromegaly caused great depression in people and stuff, and I was transitioning in my body, and I said, this isn't fun anymore. So I retired, and I had a couple construction companies, and I got a phone call from my agent in San Diego because I was California heavyweight champion. I did a couple commercials for Royal Crown Cola, and she called me on the phone. She said, Jack, they're looking for you to do a movie big time. And she said, and I think you should consider this a lot. And I said, what movie is that? She said, with Robert Mitchum, Farewell, My Lovely. And they want you badly to do it. So I said, I looked around where I was at in the bar shooting pool. I said, maybe we give this a shot. And I went out to Hollywood and did the screen test. And McQueen said, about time we got your ass out here. So it worked out really well.
We're just watching the scene at the moment where three villains are stopping the police car on the way to the small little town. Do you remember much about that particular scene?
What scene are you talking about?
It's with you, Terence, and Sarah confronting the cops in the car.
Oh, but that was shot at the back lot of Pinewood, where Terence lights up the guy's shotgun and levitates it away from. That was that was a fun. The great actor, that guy. That was we had a lot of fun that day. That's when I took the red thing off of the cop car and I handed it to Zod as adulation, and we got a lot of great moments out of that scene. It worked very well, actually.
Did Terence give you any notes on how he wanted your relationship with the characters in terms of him being the general? Did he say, right, you've got to be my subordinate? And
well, we talked about that, like we all in front agreed that he was the general and we were working for him, and and we gave him that kind of respect and stuff, So and like I said, the three of us worked in harmony extremely well. It just really, I mean, Sarah came alive in Superman. It took her right into acting where she belonged,
Oh yeah. I want to ask you. You mentioned obviously working with Steve McQueen. Do you have any a particular special memory of Steve McQueen you'd like to share?
Steve was an amazing guy. I mean, I really like Steve. He was a very giving individual. He gave a lot to the American Indians. He gave them pickups, and he funded some stuff for them and all. And he was just a giving individual, and he was a bit of a crazy. I mean, his wife was one of the nicest women, and she gave up a hell of a career to come to Hollywood with him. She was this great stage actress in New York, and then Ally McGraw went to a party at his house one time, and she left with him. I said, Steve, how could you? He said, well, I don't know. I couldn't help myself. He was a fun guy. I like Steve a lot. He was a man's man. He was a trippy guy. And he did all of his own. Then The Great Escape. You remember the movie The Great Escape?
Yes.
And he's being chased by a guy on a motorcycle and stuff. He did his own stunts and the guy driving behind him. He did both the stunts. Steve was a real, he drove motorcycles. He did all that crazy stuff. He used to go out in the desert and just. He was a fun guy to be around. I like Steve a lot.
And I imagine he probably did the same on Bullet as well, sort of doing most of his own stuff as well, I'd imagine.
Say what?
I imagine the same thing might have occurred on Bullet, with lots of the driving and things. It sounds like Steve.
No, he did all of his own. He did all of his own stunts. He was a very much in charge guy, and he was like a lot of us. I did all my own stunts in every picture I ever did. I just you want to be real as real can be. You wanted the camera to see you doing it, you know? Just if you had the ability to do it, why not?
Oh yeah, if you're built that way and you've got that sort of confidence and to do it, then why not? Um, we're watching the battle in Houston at the moment. Obviously, there's lots of explosions and things going off around you. How did you did that take a bit to get? Did you take a while to get used to having those explosions go off and all the action around you in that scene?
What scene are you talking about?
The Houston fight sequence. So you've got the helicopter.
Oh, down in Houston?
Yeah.
Houston was a back lot of Pinewood.
Hmm.
And when when we when we zapped the helicopters and Sarah blew him a kiss and took him out of the sky. I mean, and she arm wrestled with the guy, and you know, it just we had a lot of fun, man. We had a lot of fun doing that stuff. It was great. It really was.
There is one controversial scene, if there is any controversial scenes in Superman 2. There was one where you obviously you ripped off the flashing light on the police car, and then there's a scene later where a child tries to escape on a horseback and he's riding out to get.
I'll tell you something. I don't ever remember doing that scene,
No?
and that's honesty.
Yeah.
I think they clipped that in because I remember throwing the thing,
Yeah.
but it was at a vehicle.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't remember anything about injuring a child. That really kind of made me angry when I saw that.
Yeah.
I think that's a scene that Lester developed.
Oh yeah. It's one that Lester shot
and I was not happy when I saw that because
no.
I would have never agreed to that one.
Yes, because obviously in the scene the child is quite clearly killed by
Yeah, that irked me a lot. When people came to me and said that, I think it was in a television version or something.
Yeah.
Where that was first seen, and I said, "That's bull, man. No way did I ever agree to do something of that nature, and neither would I either."
No. And it's just recently in the extended Donner cut which is available on Amazon and other streaming platforms, they did put that scene back into the film. So,
yeah, but Lester, that was a Lester scene. That was not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, because even in the new Superman films, where it has quite high body count, whether they would go that far even today, it's quite a sort of a very
no, that wasn't our MO, you know.
Yeah, it seems a bit out of place compared to the other bits of the film, certainly.
That was not our MO. I just I got very irked when I saw that they had done. Somebody called me up and said, "What about this scene where the kid gets guys? What are you talking about?" "Well, you threw that light and it killed that kid. He was getting away on a horse." I said, "Never done it. Nope, not me." I remember throwing the light, but I never threw it at a kid.
Well, that's very interesting that they edited it in a certain way.
They played a game with that one, Jack.
Yeah. I did want to ask you about, obviously, you had a fantastic boxing career. Do you have a couple of highlights of your boxing times you'd like to share?
Oh, I had a lot of fun moments. Actually, if I would have, boxing was like a daytime job for me because I was a street kid. I was in other things, and I found out I had the acromegaly when I was 16-0. So I knew that it was going to hinder me throughout, but I just kept going. If I would have trained the same way that people like Ali and Foreman went away to camps and trained, I would have never lost a fight. Every time I got in shape to fight anybody, and I beat a lot of world ranked fighters.
Yeah.
And when I did that, it scared people, and people ran away from me. I was supposed to fight Joe Frazier in Houston, Texas, and they called me up to fight a kid named Terry Daniels, who was a ranked heavyweight, and they were looking for a white guy to fight Frazier in Houston Astrodome. And they called me on the phone. They said, I was in New Jersey at the time. They said, do you want to take the Terry Daniels fight? I said, when is it? And they said, next week. I said, send me a ticket. So you'll take the fight? I said, send me a ticket.
Hmm.
And I remember when I got down to Houston, and I had to be, I was under my own house arrest at home because I had union problems, and I was so I was indoors and I was training. I went to train every day because I was not hanging out in clubs and stuff like I always did. And I went to Houston. I was in great shape, and the promoter Lou Viscusi said, "My God, Jack, you're really in great shape." I said, "Aren't you supposed to be in shape when you come to a fight, man?" So I destroyed this kid Daniels, like 3 rounds. I knocked him out, and it was and I was going back to Philly on the plane with Yank Durham, who was Frazier's manager, and he said to me, "If you beat one more good fighter, you can have the Frazier fight." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, you name the place and the time, send me a ticket." He said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Absolutely." So they called me up. He said, "You want to fight Cleveland Williams, who was a very good fighter?" And Houston was his hometown. And I said, "Send me a ticket. You'll take the fight." I said, "Send me a ticket." So I went down to Houston and I beat Cleveland hands down, 10 out of 10 rounds. And Terry Daniels got the Frazier fight, and Cleveland Williams fought George Savallo on the same card. No one wanted to come near me after that. It wouldn't. And I remember I was in great shape because I was in great shape for Daniels, so I just stayed that way because I was fighting Cleveland the next month. It was very quickly afterwards, and so I stayed in great shape. And thank God, because he hit me harder, I think, than anybody. He hit me one time, my toes shook, and he came charging at me against the ropes, and I thumbed him and cuffed him and turned him, spun him around. I said, "Oh man, you ain't never touching me the rest of this night." I gave him a boxing lesson. He was, and we were in the like 8th, 9th, and 10th round. Every time I hit him a combination, he was ready to fall down. I'd grab him under the elbows and pull him up and say, "Man, don't be falling out on me. We've been dancing all night." Because I knew that if I knocked him out, it would injure his earning power afterwards. So we went the distance, and I beat him 10 out of 10. I wasn't worried about it. But it was a great fight. He was a tough fighter. He was a good guy. I liked him. But no one would fight me afterwards. Same thing when I knocked out Manuel Ramos.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted. People ran the other way. And I did the same thing when I beat a guy, Alvin Blue Lewis, in Detroit, who had went 13 rounds with Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
And then he came home and he beat Ernie Terrell, and he beat another great fighter. They were looking to get another Ali fight with him. And they called me up, and my boxing license was taken away in California because of organized crime, which was a bunch of bull. But they called me from Detroit, and they said, because Buster Matthews couldn't get a license up there. And they said, "Jack, would you fight Alvin Blue Lewis?" And I said, "Send me a ticket." He said, "You'll take the fight?" I said, "Send me a ticket." And and I said, "Can I get a license up there?" "Absolutely, no problem." So I went to Detroit, and I was in the gym training, and Blue Lewis's trainer was a famous trainer, and he sent somebody over to watch me work out. And the guy went back and he said, "I think we're in trouble." I just watched this guy spar 10 rounds, get on a heavy bag for 8 rounds, and skip rope for an hour. I think we got a problem here. And I beat this guy 10 out of 10. I beat him really badly. And so it worked out pretty well. And I went up to Ali's camp after the fight in Pennsylvania, and we were sitting there, and we were good friends. And he said to me, "If I really give you an opportunity to fight me," he said, will you really try and beat me?" I said, "Let me tell you something. For the very first time, I'll go to camp like you do. And when you come in that ring, bring a gun because you're going to need it." And he said, "2 steaks, please." Ali and I had a lot of fun. We were good friends for a long time. I liked him a lot.
But you didn't actually fight each other, or did you actually fight each other?
No, we were signed to fight 4 different times, and it never did, for some reason or another, it just never happened.
Do you have a?
Would have been a hell of a fight, though. When I beat his brother, I was in San Diego. I was California heavyweight champion, and I got a phone call from Ali, and he said, you got to do me a favor. And I said, do you a favor? He said, yeah, man. He said, I said, I'll do you a favor, sign a contract to fight me. He said, oh, well, we'll talk about that, but you got to do me. I said, what's the favor? He said, you're fighting my brother Rockman and got to get him out of boxing.
Hmm.
I said, Rockman Ali's your brother? He said, yeah. So I said, oh God, I better go in the gym a couple of days. And I knocked him out in San Diego, and he never fought again.
Right. So Muhammad Ali was quite happy you did that sort of.
Yeah, we were good friends. I really liked Ali. Ali was a great athlete. You know, he'd have been great at any sport he tried. He was just a terrific athlete, and he got all that mouthy stuff off of Gorgeous George, a wrestler. Gorgeous George told him, he said, you know, Muhammad, he said, 50% of the people will come to see you fight, and 50% will come to see you get beat, but you'll have 100% of the crowd.
Yeah.
And he was right, you know. So it worked out very well. It was good.
Michael was asked, what was your toughest fight?
Wow. That's a good question. Probably Foreman, I guess. But I wish I had trained for the Foreman fight. I only trained about 7 days for it.
Yeah.
But it was, he and I went toe to toe for 5 rounds. It was it was pretty good.
Do you have a favorite fight in your career?
Sorry?
Do you have a favorite fight?
A favorite fight?
Yeah.
I think the Blue Lewis fight, and the Manuel Ramos fight was a hell of a fight when I knocked Ramos out in LA. And again, you know, I went to Africa to fight a guy, and I was down there for a month, and I got in great shape. I mean, I was in pretty good shape. I came home, and 11 days later, I went out to LA to fight Manuel Ramos. And when I got off the plane, and George Parnassus looked at me and he said, my God, you're in great shape. I said, not only that, but I'm going to knock this guy out. No, you can't do that. We're looking to fight Ali. And I said, really? Well, guess what? This guy's going to sleep. And I knocked him out in the 7th round. George was not too happy about that.
No, definitely not. Jeremy has asked if you ever talked to Christopher Reeve about your boxing career or sports in general.
Yeah, Christopher was a good kid. You know, it was his first big movie, you know, so he was a little full of himself. And, you know, he used to walk around like Superman and like Clark Kent. And I said, Chris, you know, you're a real person. You know, you don't. Oh, I just gotta stay in character and stuff. I said, yeah, okay. You know, he wasn't a bad kid. He became a better person after he got hurt. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when he was first, when we did Superman 1 and 2, you know, there were events he was supposed to be at where kids were at and stuff, and he would be late, a couple hours late getting there and stuff like that, which is really not very good, you know.
Yeah.
Not a nice way to be. And he was very short with people and stuff. And but then he got hurt. He became an unbelievably nice person. And he changed a lot, actually. But Chris was all right. He was young, and he, like I said, it was his first major film, you know.
Yeah.
And he got a little full of himself, but had he turned around and said, no Donner, no me, it would have been a totally different franchise. So he hurt himself more than anything else.
I mean, certainly after the success of Superman 1, you can understand why you know, success and might go to your head, and you might get a bit more.
Well, it made him a huge star. I mean, overnight he became a big star. You know, there's a lot of funny stories about Christopher. You know, he was very naive.
Yeah. Because he was in his mid-20s, wasn't he? So obviously very young to have.
Yeah, he was very naive, and he got married the first time he had a baby with a girl whose boyfriend was in jail for drugs, and Christopher paid to get him out. You know, but he was just a very naive kid. You know, we used to go to a club downtown in London. It was a great hangout, and we were down there one night, and Ringo Starr's ex-wife said, "Give that young man to me. I'll bounce him off the ceiling a few times, and we'll see what he's made of." But Chris was all right. He was just naive. But he took a while to get it. I think he knew he made a mistake when he should have stood up for Donner, and he didn't do it.
Yeah, I think the only reason I can think of why he didn't, either he was perhaps worried about his career being, obviously he's just made it in.
Well, I think they talked him into believing that he didn't need Donner, that they were going to do this and that, and they never did. What they said, they originally they were going to do 10 Supermen, and like they were doing the Indiana Jones thing. They were following each other,
Yeah.
And they never, the Salkinds were, they just never did what they said they were going to do.
It did seem that Christopher sort of fell in and out of love with the Superman character. Obviously, doing the first three, then stepping away, and then a few years later, before he did number 4. Do you think that was partly due to the Dick Donner situation that kind of left?
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind about that. Yeah, a lot of people were very unhappy about that, and rightfully so.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of some of the crew didn't return, obviously, because they felt loyal to Dick Donner and.
Well, Donner deserved all the loyalty that was there. He was the guy. You're talking about a great director, boy. The guy was. And Joffrey Unsworth was an unbelievable cinematographer. I mean, we had a great crew. We had a great cast. Why would you want to break that up? And then, like I said, how do you cut Marlon Brando out of a picture? That's the most ridiculous thing in the world.
I've got the feeling that they probably would have cut Brando out whether or not Dick had done the film or not. And I would imagine that if Dick Donner had said, "I'll complete Superman 2," I imagine the moment they said we're not using Brando, he probably would have gone at that point. So I think either way, he would have had objections.
Donner would never stood for that. No. Because the Brando scenes were too dynamic. They were, when you look at the Donner cut, don't you think it's better with Brando playing the father all the way through?
Oh yeah. I mean, the presence that Brando has obviously drives every scene he's in anyway, and obviously
absolutely
so much power. And
I mean, how do you take that away from a film? That's kind of crazy. You got to be nuts to do that. But they thought about money more than they thought about whatever. So it's just. I mean, they did that. There's a law in the guild called the Salkind Law in the Directors Guild. I don't know if you're aware of it. They call it the Salkind Guild, and the reason for it was they did a picture called The Three Musketeers.
Oh yes.
And Raquel Welch called Ollie Reed up one morning. Ollie lived in the Isle of Jersey, and she called Ollie on the phone one morning. She said, "Oliver, do we do another film that I don't know about?" And Oliver said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "I'm watching the promotion for the Four Musketeers, and we're all in it, and I don't remember doing the movie." And Oliver said, "I get drunk a lot on set." He said, "But I don't get that drunk." And what they did was they took the footage that they had shot, they took another actor and they shot some footage with him, and they inserted it and created another movie called The Four Musketeers.
Yeah.
And they were not happy puppies about it, man.
No.
But that's the kind of things that so they put a law in stating you can't do that. You shouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah. But yes, I mean, going in to know that they're making one film or two films, and obviously it affects.
Well, if you're an actor, you're going to get paid. That's like cheating you. It's like paying you for one film when they know they're going to do two. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. It's a very strange thing for people not to be aware of. For them to not whether or not they always had the intention to split the Musketeers into 2 films, we'll never know. But of course, you've got to be clear of everybody from the onset, haven't you? I've got a question from Ian. Would you consider writing your autobiography?
I have a book out called Family Legacy, and that's part of it. And we're getting ready to do that into a mini series, and which will go into a series.
Yeah.
And that's part of my life. And then people really want me to sit down and write my own. I probably will eventually. Yeah.
So family legacy is fictional, but based upon your.
Well, it's actually 80% true and 20% fictional. When I first wrote it, the government came to me and said, you cannot publish this as nonfiction because there's too much truth in it. And they weren't going to let me publish it in America. So I struck a deal with them where we put a little bit of fiction and the rest of it was true. And they said, that's okay, as long as you put a little bit of fiction in it and you confuse people a little bit, no problem. So, but the book reads out very well, and the miniseries is going to be terrific. We're going to have a lot of fun.
You've got an idea when the series is going to come out?
Getting ready in the next month or so. We should have it pretty much set up to shoot the pilot. We're putting together the final pieces and stuff. I just have to get to New York. I had injured my leg, or I'd have been back there a month ago.
Right.
So we're just winding down to get everybody together and go back east and put together the financial structure and everything to do the pilot. And if we do the pilot, I know we'll probably make a deal with Paramount Television or HBO, one or the other.
Oh, sounds very exciting. We'll look forward to that, Jack.
Yeah, it's a great film. Then we're doing another film out in Nevada called Red River, which is a great horror picture with a Faust twist to it. It's kind of really unique horror movie.
Right.
And we're getting ready we're going to shoot that out in Nevada. Now I'm going to work as an actor in that. Family Legacy I'm doing as a producer. It's all good. And I've got 2 more books coming out.
Oh, yeah.
The sequels to the Family Legacy book. And then I have a picture in Ireland that I've wanted to do for a long time. I wrote a script years ago. It was a famous picture out called The Informer with Victor McLaughlin and John Ford. And I did another adaptation of Liam O'Flaherty's book, which actually came out better than the Ford script.
Yeah.
And I've been up to doing it a few times, and I didn't like the deals that people were putting forth. So I said, the hell with it, and I put it on a show. And now I think it's time to get it done. So now that this pandemic stuff is lifting and stuff, we're putting some things into motion to do 3 or 4 pictures in a row before I hang it all up,
Oh, it all sounds very exciting.
And then we're building a studio in Nevada. We're going to put a 4 million square foot studio with everything under one roof for the very first time in the history of the business. And we're putting a little smart city next to it that'll house 30,000 people, all employees of the studio, and giving them a 7-year work contract, which hasn't happened since the 50s.
Wow.
So we give them stability of jobs, and it will put everything under one roof, all the new technologies, everything, and do television, movies, TV, database, all the LED, all the hologram, all the technologies and music and everything, all under one roof. We don't have to go bouncing all over the place. It's going to be phenomenally and greatly cost effective for a lot of film people. So we're really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it sounds really good. And obviously you've been in the business obviously for quite a few years. How is the
45 years, man.
45 years. So how has the industry changed from your perception, and obviously has it got?
Well, I think that the problem with a lot of it is that the majors are controlled by corporations now.
Yeah.
There's no creativity anymore, and most of the people that run the studios are MBA guys. They don't have any creativity, so they're making a lot of remakes of old famous movies, and not doing it very well. And there's some of the stuff they're putting out is really garbage, you know.
Mm.
And people deserve to be entertained when they go to the films, to the movies. And I think that we're going to embark on doing that, of putting creative people back into the stronghold. And that's why so many good actors have their own production companies now, and they're doing independent films,
Mm.
which are much better than the stuff the studios are doing. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree 100% on that one. Clyde has asked, did you were you able to keep any of your wardrobe or any props from Superman, and or did they?
You know, I was never a harbor of. I have kept a couple things, but I never, like a lot of people, they hoarded a lot of stuff. I just never. I'm not that kind of. You know, like I've got a lot of awards for uh, for uh, for boxing and sports, and an award for acting I got from Italy, and but I don't hang them on the wall and stuff like that. You know, I just put them in a drawer.
It
I
sounds
just never.
sounds
My
fantastic.
life is changing all the time, always doing this or doing that, you know. So it's I was never a hoarder. I never, you know, and it was sad because I should have done a lot more photographs with a lot, because I worked with a lot of great stars in my life, you know, Brando and Hackman and Omar Sharif and Chuck Norris and, you know, Jessica Lange and just Jeffrey Bridges and a lot of very stalwart forward actors, you know,
I just
Jimmy
want.
Coburn, and so I've had a, kind of a great career, you know,
Oh
and had a
yeah,
lot of fun doing stuff I did, working with working with Danny Aykroyd. You ever watch Dragnet?
yeah.
You know, you could sit and watch Dragnet 50 times and still not hear all the one-liners that Danny Aykroyd put in that movie.
Hmm.
I mean, it was just a lot. And that was Tom Hanks' breakout movie, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And it worked very well. So
Did you come on to Dragnet because of Tom Mankiewicz directing? Did he have you in mind, or was it
that was
a
probably one of the reasons. Yeah,
hmm.
yeah. They came and offered it to me, and I said, yeah. Read the script, and I liked it, and I liked Tom Mankiewicz quite a bit.
So how was Tom as a director?
Very talented guy. Tom was a very talented man,
Hmm.
and he picked up a lot from Donner.
Yes.
So Dragnet was very well directed. You know, it was I don't know if you've ever seen the film, but
I
it's a
have.
pretty
Yeah.
good movie.
Hmm.
That's a pretty good movie. Funny movie.
Yeah. Did Tom contribute to the script as well? Obviously, being a seasoned writer, was he?
No, he contributed to the whole thing. Tom's a very creative guy.
Hmm.
Tom's a very creative guy, and you know, and he knew my abilities, and he let me go doing Emil Muzz, and Emil Muzz came out. It worked out very well. It was we had a lot of fun doing the film.
Wonderful. I have a question for Michael. What's your favourite genre of films to work on? So, sci-fi, action. Do you have a favourite type of film?
If I like the script, that's all that counts. You know, it doesn't make any difference what the genre is. If it's a very workable script and the people involved are right there, then it's that's the fun of it. You know.
Hmm. So we're getting to the Metropolis Battle, which is obviously a huge sequence, and they built a part of the New York street on the back lot of Pinewood. What do you remember from filming the battle?
The battle.
Yeah. Hmm.
Oh, the battle. That was great filming. It took us, like I said, we shot VistaVision on VistaVision, so it was tedious and long hours, but
Hmm.
it came out terrific. I mean, I remember the first time I sit and watch it, I said, "Wow, we did that." You know, really, we broke a lot of technology rules, and it showed. I mean, that's why I think it's one of the reasons why the film is such a classic.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah, I'd agree entirely because it's so revolutionary, the technologies, and it looks so so real. Obviously, with CGI, it kind of looks like it's computer generated, whereas there's is a film like Superman, everything it looks like it has a.
Well, the great part of it was that they, the battle was great, but nobody was killing each other. Although you're trying to destroy each other, but it came down to the end to where they found Superman figured a way to take our powers away and lock us up, like
Yeah.
the old American way of putting you in jail. It wasn't about destroying the three villains; it was about taking them out of society, and I think that's very meaningful.
It is, yeah. Because I believe the exteriors of this fight scenes were filmed in November, so I'm guessing it was quite cold. Do you remember the weather?
Oh my God, it was chilly. When you watch our breath, you could see the smoke coming out of our breath when we're blowing down the street, that towards the cars. It was a little chilly. The pine back a lot of pine with that night. Believe me when I tell you.
Because it probably was many nights that you were doing that. I imagine.
Yeah, it was. Again, when you work with Donner, he set things up very well, so that shots came off very well. That makes any sense to you?
It does. It does. I was wondering what it was like to work with the various stunt coordinators. Obviously, you had Paul Weston, Vic Armstrong, and
Paul was a great stunt coordinator.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole crew of Superman were really good. We had a great crew.
I believe Paul doubled for Terrence a lot of the time, so you probably would have had quite a bit.
He did. He double turns. Yeah, he did.
And do you remember Vic Armstrong?
Vic Armstrong's a brilliant stunt guy. My God, Dick was. He went on to become one of the best in the business. He did some of the Indiana Jones with the other guy as well. The Indiana Jones sequences and stuff. And Vic was a very clever guy and a real nice person.
Yeah.
Nice guy as well.
I was wondering about. Do you remember Alf Joint?
Sure. I was a good guy. Man, I was a good. Everybody that worked on that film were, we had a good time and good relationships with.
Yeah.
And, you hung out with crew guys for the lunch and stuff, and it was just a lot of good camaraderie there. Which when you're doing a film like that, you need to have that.
Yeah.
Because the people aren't paying attention to some of the stuff we could have got hurt very badly.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because Alf Joint has always been something that's fascinated me, because obviously he did quite a few Bond films and Indiana Jones and things like that. So
man, Al Joint was another good guy. They were yeah. I enjoyed working with the whole crew over there. I enjoyed London a lot.
We mentioned earlier Jeffrey Unsworth was the cinematographer on one, and obviously parts of two before he sadly passed away.
Joffrey taught me the camera. I mean, he was just such a gentleman. My God, was he a gentleman? And he was so brilliant. He was just, I had a couple of people in my career that really taught me a lot. Mitchum was one. Joffrey Unsworth was one. And John Ford. I used to sit and have conversations with John Ford. And John was a unique guy because he was a director, an editor, and a cinematographer all rolled into one. And he used to shoot rehearsals.
All right. Yeah.
John, they would be doing a rehearsal on the shot, and Ford would film it, and then they thought they were getting ready to shoot the shot, and John would be moving the camera, and people would say, "What are we doing?" John said, I got what I needed. Well, let's go. Because he felt that they were so much more relaxed and everything. Some of the rehearsals were better than, John was a very lovable individual. I like John Ford a lot.
The cinematographer on Lester's scenes was, I believe, a guy called Robert Painter. Do you remember working with?
Yeah, Robert was a good guy. Robert was, the crew on all the Superman things were quite good. Never had a problem with the crew. And I worked with some pretty good cinematographers. I mean, John Alonzo was an Oscar-winning cinematographer who did Farewell My Lovely. He
Yeah.
won the Oscar for Chinatown. And we did Farewell My Lovely. We had 4 Oscar winners on that picture. John Alonzo was a cinematographer. Dean Televeres won the Oscar for set design on Godfather. And the makeup guy was the famous family. They were Oscar winners, and the guy who did special effects was an Oscar winner. All because of Mitchum. They all want to work with Robert Mitchum. You know?
Yeah. One of the most iconic parts of the Metropolis Battle we're now watching is when you and Sarah lift up the bus, and
The bus.
do you remember doing that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I had to eat my Wheaties that morning. You know. That was a great shot. Of course, they had a big crane hoisting the thing up, but reality-wise, it looked really well. It looked like we actually threw a bus across the street.
You weren't worried about having a bus sort of above you, and you felt quite safe.
Nah, I felt fine, no problem. A lot of trust in the crew.
Yeah, because I did read a story that there was a bit of slack in the chain. Sarah was in character, and
Sarah got very nervous. Trust me.
Yeah. But I think she got injured slightly by taking a bit too much of the weight of the bus. I think she.
She strained her back, her lower back. But but it basically was okay. She didn't get hurt too bad. And she done the stunt herself rather than have someone else do it. You know what I mean? Which made it much more real.
Oh yeah, it's always best you can see the actor, doing it, and you're not looking for the stunt doubles, as you say. So I had a question from Clyde. He wanted to know what your reaction was when you saw Superman 1 for the first time.
I quite liked the film. I just was a little sad that we were only in the beginning of it. But you could see the magic of Donner. It was just a well done film, and the development of Christopher, and the fact that we were working every day with him. You watched him grow into the part that he was doing, and it really worked extremely well. And he had great people around him, Hackman and Ned Beatty and everybody. So there was a great supporting cast there. It was quite good.
Do you have any lasting memories of Ned at all?
Ned Beatty was what a gentleman. God, I liked Ned a lot. We didn't have that many scenes together, but he was on set all the time. He was around. Ned was a very nice man. I liked him a lot. Very good actor, very talented man.
Well, obviously, with the stars that were attached to this film, you must have known that it would probably been, it was going to be a big success. But were you prepared at the time for how big the film was going to be? What actually was, and
you could tell, we could tell the chemistry was there, and you knew that we were doing it. We knew we were doing a hit movie. You get a feeling about things when you're on a set. It's just the way things harmonize and work, and the relationship between the actors and the director and all. When it clicks, it clicks.
Yeah.
There was always a joke. Somebody was always. Hackman was a practical joker, and Brando was a practical joker, always pulling some kind of a stunt, And Valerie Perrine was a very beautiful woman. I mean, Valerie was a crazy on. She one time we were on set and they didn't have her chair with a name on it. They just gave her a plain chair, and she got very upset. She said, "Who do I have to sleep with to get?" Well, she said it more dramatically than that, but she meant, "Who do I have to sleep with to get my chair with a name on it?" So I yelled out to her, "Same people you did last night, Valerie, just reversed the order." So we used to have we had a lot of fun. It was a great crew to work with. The cast, everybody got on very well. I mean, it's just to work with people for that period of time
Yeah.
was that's a long time to be on a film, you know. And I had done one other picture like that. King Kong was 9 months. I
Right.
worked a long time shooting King Kong.
Hmm.
So I had that experience with King Kong, but then I went from King Kong to Superman, March or Die in between. Went from King Kong to March or Die to Superman,
Yeah.
and it was just harmony. You know, you work with people and you get into that flow
Hmm.
of harmony with people, and it just works out. You know, I mean, we did March or Die. We had great. I mean, Catherine Deneuve and Max von Sydow and Hackman and Marcel Bazuffi, and I mean, it was just great actors. And Terrence Hill.
Hmm.
Terrence was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Italian kid who made a fortune with spaghetti westerns with a guy named Bud Spencer.
Yeah.
March or Die was the first picture he ever did where he spoke English,
Hmm.
and he was. We had a lot of fun. I mean, Terrence was a real spaghetti western guy. We were doing a scene in Spain, I think it was, where all these. Actually, we were in Nevada because it was when we came back, and they had all these Arabs supposed to be coming down the hill to kill us.
Hmm.
And it's like the last stand, you know, and we're behind these sand dunes, and we're aiming. And Terrence and I were right next to each other, and he turned to me and he said, "How they expect me to get?" Because all we could see was the camera, you know, when we had to envision that these guys were marched coming straight at us.
Hmm.
And Terrence said, "I don't know how they expect me to react when I can't see anybody coming at me." I said, "Terrence, that's what they call acting, son. You know, it's what you're here for and you're paid for."
Hmm.
We had a lot of fun with him. Terrence was a good kid. And that was not a bad little movie. They they shot a 4 hour version and tried to cut an hour and 40 minutes out of 4 hours and leaves a few dead holes. But if you see the television version where it's 4 hours long, it all makes sense. And it was a pretty good film.
Hmm.
Great
What?
cast. Catherine Deneuve was, oh my God, what a gorgeous woman. Jeez.
We had some questions about doing the flying scenes. Were they uncomfortable? Was it easy to pick up how to move your body to make it look realistic? What was
To do what scenes?
anything with the wires, the flying scenes? Did you?
The wires weren't, we didn't really use them all that much, you know. It was amazing. We had a set when we crashed into the Daily Planet. That was done on a soundstage.
Hmm.
And we had the wires on us, and Sarah injured her rib cage. It was the thing, the harness was bothering her,
Yeah.
and it was amazing when because everything was being pulled by ropes by different guys. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So they would go to lunch and have a few pints, and they come back. They weren't really in harmony as much as they were before.
Okay.
So I said to the guy down, I said, this is a little bit awkward what we're doing here. I said, how do you know that these wires are safe? I said, oh man, there's no problem with them. So I started doing somersaults,
Hmm.
and they got frantic. He said, whoa, Jesus, because if the wire broke, you're hitting the floor. And
Hmm.
there was no mats anywhere down there.
Hmm.
So it was we had a lot of fun. We only did a few scenes where we actually had wires on us. On the water scene when we landed, we had wires on that.
Yeah.
And when we went through the Daily Planet, that was on a soundstage.
And there's a really good wide shot of all three of you with carrying Hackman and Murray Kidder on your backs as you go into the fortress. Obviously,
That was VistaVision on VistaVision.
Yeah.
We shot that on the body molds.
Hmm.
That worked really well. I had Margot on my back.
Yeah.
It was just a double body mold, and that was part of the VistaVision on VistaVision that we shot, and it looked terrific, didn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a wonderful, wonderful looking scene.
I didn't
Um,
see any wires in those scenes, boy. That was all, and it wasn't CGI either. That was all the real deal.
there's very few, even looking very eagle-eyed, very rare do you notice a wire shot in any of the Superman films, really. So
Oh yeah, you very rarely you would see them at all.
hmm,
In fact, it was the only scenes that I can say were really depicting the wires were when we landed on the
hmm,
water
yeah,
and walked on water when we first landed at Houston,
hmm,
and when we went into the Daily Planet. That was done on a soundstage
hmm.
where we flew through the windows.
We've had a few questions come in about working with Margot Kidder. Do you remember working with Margot?
Margot was brilliant. Margot was such a love, man. Jesus,
Hmm,
Maggie, we had a lot of fun with Margot. Margot was a very talented woman and very nice woman.
hmm,
Uh, Margot was a lot of fun. She was crackers.
hmm.
She was a funny chick.
Do you remember what Ilya Solkine? Because he was a big fan of Superman comic books and was the guy who petitioned Alexander, his father, to make the film in the first place. I take it he had quite an enthusiasm for the content.
Yeah, I mean they had a great screenwriter. They were all involved in uh, in doing things, and I just was very irked that they allowed the Lester thing to happen and they ruined the franchise. I thought they shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
You know, they made a lot of money with Superman 1 and Superman 2, but they could have made so much more.
Hmm.
They weren't longevity type people like that. That's what really irked me. Why put that in the hands of people that weren't going to fulfill what they were originally supposed to do? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's like taking the money and running. You know what I mean?
It is a bit, isn't it? Were you at a certain point, Richard Lester was brought in on Superman 1 to kind of act as a go-between between Dick Donner and the Solkines. Were you around when Richard Lester was on Superman 1?
When Lester came on,
Yeah, on the first film where when Dick was still
well,
doing
we
it.
watched him come out on a set, and everybody was questioning, "What the hell is he doing here?"
Yeah.
And then someone said, "Well, they owe him a picture," and I said, "So what?" And he was trying to familiarize himself with what we were doing and stuff.
Mm.
And then it became apparent that what the Salkinds had in mind, and that was kind of really, that was a bummer.
So you guys knew that there was something going on, but perhaps it wasn't.
Well, why would the guy be there on a set all the time?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. And then when they said that they owed him a picture,
Yeah.
I said, well, I never thought that they were going to fire Donner and not finish Superman 2 with him because we
Mm.
shot so much of 2 already. I mean, we never realized that, but you knew that they were going to bring him on to shoot one of the Superman movies, and you knew Donner should have shot at least 5 or 6 of them,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm.
But that was being curtailed right there when they were bringing Lester around.
Mm.
Something wasn't right.
Because I assume that the Dick Donner did try to hide some of the behind-the-scenes problems from the cast and crew. So was that your impression as well, that Dick didn't really let it affect the set?
Yeah, nobody really came out and said what was going on until after the fact.
Hmm.
We broke, you know, when we broke for the hiatus while they had to get rid of one,
Hmm.
and then we came back to Lester.
Yeah,
That all happened while we were on hiatus.
yeah. Because we have a good question from Clyde, who says, obviously, when Richard Lester came on board, did he feel comfortable with the fact that it was any ill thing towards him, or was he better?
I don't. I think he was. Lester was Lester. He just and he was mechanical.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know how if I was a director and Hackman wouldn't come back and work with me, I'd be saying, well, what the hell, you know?
Mm.
And then they were asking me to cut Brando out of a picture
Yeah.
and bring the mother back to redirect her and shots and everything.
Yeah.
You know, say, you got to know you're taking value away from the movie doing that.
Yeah,
You
it
can't
must have.
be that naive, for God's sakes.
No, because Rich Lessor was a very experienced director, and he must have felt a little bit uncomfortable perhaps at the beginning, because he must have known how beloved Richard Donner was. So it must have been difficult for him in some respects, I would have said.
Well, I would, I never had that much interface with Lester
Mm,
myself. I wasn't my cup of tea.
yeah,
I interacted with Donner quite a bit because he was my cup of tea. I liked him a lot. It's just I just don't. It was just kind of the whole thing was kind of so flaky
mm,
the way they did it and all. And kept saying to ourselves, why? And then when I went back and I said, man, why did I even come back? What are we doing here?
yeah.
Because it was night and day. You could tell the difference right away.
Mm. We talk about the difference in tone, and obviously with Dick Donner, the villains obviously survive, and you see them being taken to prison, and the way they leave it in the theatrical cut is that it seems that all three of you died when you fell into the Fortress of Solitude. Um, so when you saw the theatrical cut, were you upset that it seemed that you'd all been killed off in that moment?
I wasn't too happy about it because I knew that we weren't.
Mm,
What they envisioned it to make it look like meant that they were bringing us back.
yes.
And that wasn't that I said, wow, what a way to shut the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
We knew that there was a different ending.
Mm. And how would you have liked to? I was going to ask, how would you have liked to have developed Non if you had more films? What would you have liked to have explored that you didn't get a chance to?
Well, I mean, I don't know what they would have kept us the way we were probably as villains.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of what we have for bringing us back as cohorts of Superman. I think that's a much better deal,
Yeah.
actually. But I don't know whether they really contemplated. I think that they were, according to Solkind's mind, I think they were over with the villains
Mm.
because they already had Superman 3 involved what they were going to do with Lester doing it with Richard Pryor and stuff.
Yeah.
And Margot Kidder was not, they were never going to, they fired her. They weren't going to let her, but she was having an affair with Richard Pryor. And Richard Pryor said, you either put her back in the movie or I'm not doing the movie.
Oh, right.
And he made him pay her $1 million.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Richard Pryor stood right up and said, either Margot comes back on this film or I walk.
Because I knew they had a relationship prior to Superman 3, but I didn't realise that.
Well, they were having a relationship while they were filming Superman 3.
Oh, right.
It was, but Richard Pryor stood right up and said, see, there's what I'm telling you, the strength of actors, you understand?
Mm.
Richard Pryor said, no Margot, no me.
Yeah.
And they had already dealt into the prior deal and stuff and the way they wrote the script and everything, which I thought, shadowed the Superman deal. I mean, I didn't think much of 3, to be honest with you.
I think the problem with 3 is that it's got some good moments, but it's very much about Richard Pryor more than Superman, and the Superman film should be about Superman, of course. Clyde wanted to know if there was originally going to be four villains from Krypton, or whether it was always three.
Whether it was what, 4 villains?
I guess, because I think there was a draft of script where there was four of you rather than three, but it got cut. When you came on, was it always just the three of you?
I never saw that.
Hmm.
I never saw that.
Yeah,
I only knew of the 3 of us. The script they sent me originally only had 3 of us in it.
Yeah, I think it might be in Mario Puzo's first draft, perhaps, that it was. It was.
I never saw that.
Did you ever meet the writers, say David or Leslie Newman or Mario or?
Oh yeah, the Newmans were really nice people. Very talented people. They were nice people. Mario Puzo was a nice guy. I mean, he wrote The Godfather, and you're talking about my life,
Yeah.
So, but he only wrote what he was told to write.
Yeah.
And The Godfather was very, very great. It was a great movie. Godfather 2 was one of the best movies ever made.
It is.
But Puzo did what he was told to do. That's why when we do Family Legacy, it's going to make The Godfather pale, because we're going to tell the truth. And there was a lot of truth in The Godfather, but the Godfather, Brando's part, was actually 4 different people.
Right.
Parts of New York, you understand? And my father was one of them. My father was, when they went to Brando to ask him to get in the drug business,
yeah,
and he said he declined, saying that if we touch it, our children will touch it, it'll be the downfall of the families. Well, my father said that. And my father controlled all the docks of New York, and in fact, the country.
Right.
And he was very much against the heroin business. And Vito Genovese wanted the heroin business. My father didn't. Neither did Frank Costello want it. Frank Costello was the political don that had all the judges in his pocket, had the police commissioner, everybody in his pocket. And he said, if we get in the heroin business, we're going to lose all our political contracts, because the filthy business, gambling, they can live with. Gambling and loan sharking and stuff they can live with, but the drug business is, you're talking about affecting children and stuff. So it's a filthy business, and if we get involved in it, it's going to be the downfall of the families. And that's exactly what happened in New York. They went to war against each other over greed.
Yeah. So what was it like growing up with a father that was so involved in?
I never knew. Albert was killed when I was 14 years old. They killed him when I was 14, and I'd only met him once. I was a wartime affair. My mother lived in Philadelphia, and in 1943, Albert, 42, Albert went in the army to get away from. They were chasing him everywhere, so he went in the army as a sergeant, teaching soldiers how to be longshoremen. And he was stationed in Indian Gap, Pennsylvania, which was right outside of Philly, but he was never at the base. He was in Philly every night. And my mother made Jane Mansfield look like a girl, a boy, and there was a torrid affair, and I was a product of it. I was born in 1943. But Albert had a dress manufacturing business in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. He spent a lot of time down there, and he was in the city a lot with my mom and stuff. So, and my stepfather was away in World War II. He was an aviator. He was over in Germany. He was overseas.
Yeah.
So the affair happened, but I was a product of it, and Bob's your uncle.
So is it fair to
So
say?
I was raised. I had a minder around me, a guy called Rip Collins, and Rip Collins, Michael Collins was a famous IRA guy in Ireland in the 20s. Well, his cousin was Rip Collins, and Rip Collins was an engineer for General Electric, a very, very bright guy.
Yeah.
And he ran the waterfront. He was for the IRA, and they're very close to my father because my father controlled the waterfronts. They worked together with the IRA and all. And Rip was like a minder to me. He was around. I was around him quite a bit when I was a kid. Very bright guy. Taught me a lot of things.
So when you did your book, Family Legacy, that was an opportunity, I take it, to look back at your father's life and perhaps make sense of it in a way.
Well, it was an opportunity to do that, and it was, and he left me a lot of documentation about what was going to happen, what happened before, and I was very close to Meyer Lansky, and I was very close to Frank Costello, and a few other people. And when I was a young man, I went to Sicily when I was about 18 years old. I got very close to people over there, and my whole world changed. When I found out, I met my father right before he was assassinated, and it was all over the papers and everything. And so and I was under the guidance of Meyer Lansky and Frank Costello. After that, I would go up to New York and sit down with them and have chats and stuff. And then when I became 16, 17, I started getting involved in family business. And I was schooled well by Rip Collins. He taught me, like I said, quite a bit, and prepared me, actually. So but it was, to meet my father. He came to watch me play a freshman football game. It was funny. There were three of them. They were dressed up to dressed to the nines like mafia guys did. And here I am. It's a freshman football game on the back lot of the high school. People thought they were scouts because they were so well dressed and everything. Nobody realized who they were. And Albert showed up at my house and said, "Whoa," and the bomb was dropped on me about who he was and stuff. And I was supposed to go to New York to sit down with him and have some long discussions, and he got killed a week later.
Oh, right. Was it your love of boxing that took you away from the family business? Was there a conscious decision that?
Well, there was the guys that controlled my boxing career in the beginning were Sam Margolis was the head of the Jewish mob in Philly. Blakey Palermo was the head of the Italian mob down there with Angelo Bruno, and so they were involved in my career, but I was headstrong. And if my father was alive, or Frankie Carbo was out of jail, who was to be my father after my father was dead, Frankie Carbo was to be the next Albert Anastasia, but he went to jail over a fixed fight with Blakey Palermo, and but if Carbo was out, Carbo ran boxing in New York. If Frankie Carbo would have been out, I'd have been world champion. I'd have had a title fight.
Yeah.
And I would have went to camp properly because he would have made sure of that, and I would have trained a lot differently and stuff. And I had a lot. I had a lot of natural talent. That's why I'm in the Hall of Fame of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New England, California. And a lot of people recognize my fighting ability. It's just that I fought, and I was fighting like every other week, just because it moved me around. I'd be in Cleveland, I'd take care of some business there, and boxing was like, I didn't care if I won or lost because I didn't want the notoriety. I wanted to be able to do the stuff I was doing. It was like a day job for me. It was like a cloak,
Yeah.
But it was when I got in shape and when I really put my mind to it, no one would have ever beaten me. I had a lot of natural talent. And I don't say that to blow my own horn. I just had a lot of natural talent, and it showed. When I like I said, when I got in shape, I beat some very good fighters, and beat them handedly and beat them in their own backyard. So. When I fought Norton, when I fought Kenny Norton, I took the fight on a week's notice. He called me up in New Jersey. The guy he was supposed to fight fell out, and they asked me if I'd fight Kenny Norton. I said, "Send me a ticket." because I had a lot of indictments for union business or, up my nose, and I wanted to get out of town. So I
Mm.
got on a plane and I went to San Diego, and I gave Norton a licking. I mean, I won they stole the decision, but I won the town and stayed there and knocked out a half dozen people and became California heavyweight champion and fought. And I beat Henry Clark, who no one wanted to fight, out of San Francisco. Henry was a hell of a fighter. And so, things progressed on from there. And, just I stayed in San Diego for a few years and then came back and forth to the East Coast and bounced around the country. And then I got in the film business, and then I moved to Europe in the early 80s because there was so much problem. Friends of mine are being put in jail everywhere. And I learned from Meyer and from Frank Costello, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
They tried to lock me up a few times, but I was always a few steps ahead of them. And so I just went over to Europe, and I married into the Rothschild family. Samuel, my wife, Jackie Samuel, was Hill Samuel Merchant Bank Shell Oil, her family.
Oh, lovely.
And I lived in Europe for 20 years.
And what made you want to move back to the
But I had all my friends over there. I was very friendly with the Crays and Richardsons and the Nash family. And my best friend was David Barry, who ran West London. He lived over in West London, in the Mayfair area. And so I knew every criminal in England. We had a lot of fun, a lot of fun things together. Crays were crazy. I liked Ronnie Cray. Ronnie was crazy, but I'll tell you one thing: when they ran their manners, there was no crime in that city.
Yeah.
And nobody walked around with guns, and you wouldn't think of. I mean, a woman. You go back in the 50s and 60s in London, and there were all kinds of clubs. It was a wide open city. The Revolution, and there were all night clubs, all night long, and after hour clubs, and you wouldn't think of committing a crime in that city. They were that tight, and Terry Downs was a dear friend of mine who was the first middleweight champion that England ever had. Terry was a fun kid, a cockney kid.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of fun in England. I enjoyed it over there a lot. So when I went back to do Superman, I already knew a lot of people. So I just moved. I moved to Ireland. My wife had a horse ranch, a beautiful place in Dunlavin, big 196-acre farm down there. So I lived in Ireland. I lived on the Isle of Man. I lived in Belgium. Bounced around Europe for a lot of years. Out of sight, out of mind. And all my friends were being put away. I had friends of mine in America that did 30 and 40 years in jail. Because they would never open their mouths.
Yeah.
They lived under Omerta, and they just went away. Things were changing. The wars over drugs in New York, and a lot of things changed. And it was became a different world.
I mean, obviously, there's lots of films about mafia and organized crime. And
I'll tell you one thing funny is that here's a fun part.
Yeah.
Nobody has a crystal ball in Hollywood. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the one genre that has never lost money is organized crime pictures. Even the spoofs made money.
Yeah.
And you sit down and you think of how much money The Godfather made, and then there was a little picture done a few years back called Road to Perdition.
Yes, that's good.
Tom Hanks did. It made $1 billion.
Mm.
It was about a hit guy that nobody ever heard of, and his son. And Paul Newman was the other character in it. And so the mafia pictures make a fortune. Boardwalk Empire, Sopranos. They just did a picture of The Irishman, which is total bullshit. I mean, I knew Frank Phelan very well. He was from Philly, and he was a driver for Hoffa. He never killed Hoffa, and he never killed Joey Gallo. But Hollywood takes liberties with things, you know what I mean? So we're going to do this. We're going to tell the truth about a lot of things that happened. And the book that I wrote, Family Legacy, starts with my father's death, and I tell the truth about the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah.
It ends with the Kennedy assassination. I tell the truth about it. what really happened and why Jack Kennedy died. And so we're going to go on. We got two more books we're bringing out. And we're going to tell the truth about a lot of things that happened and how people got thrown under the bus and why they got thrown under the bus.
Mm.
And the fact that the government didn't want any partners any longer, because in the beginning, you go back to 1910, the government, industry, unions, and organized crime were all partners.
Mm.
They were partners for years up to the Kennedy administration. And they watched each other's back. And the drug business brought a whole different element into things. But you got to get into who was really in the drug business and who was really behind a lot of things and how much did the government have involved in it, because it was about a lot of money,
Mm.
you know. And when you're dealing with money, people act funny,
Yes.
you know.
Mm.
And the families, when I was involved in, we involved in they had their motor rende was, organized crime in those days was gambling and loan sharking and extortion. And if you didn't have money, how could you pay them? So they made sure you went to work. They employed people.
Yes.
They had construction companies and they did all kinds of things and they invested back in America. Meyer Lansky was a brilliant guy, and they invested in insurance companies and they invested in Westinghouse, General Electric, Sears and Roebuck. A lot of things that our economy rose on. They
Mm.
were investing in, and General Electric, motor industry, automotive industry. So, but that all changed over the drug wars and stuff, and a lot of things were changed, and the government changed, and there's a lot of truth that has to be told. So we're going to do it, and we know it'll be a huge success because people are tired of being lied to. The same as London, how London changed. I mean, when I first went to London, nobody walked around that city with guns.
Mm.
The police didn't even carry guns.
Nope.
Only the flying squad.
Yes.
The regular bobbies never carried a gun. You understand?
Yep.
And so there was a whole different ruling system, And Ronnie and Reggie went after people with a sword. And Ronnie was the only one. Ronnie started carrying a gun, and when they put him away, I mean, they were having a big dinner, and the guy called Ronnie a faggot, and he shot him. I said, Ronnie, what, are you crazy? You are homosexual. He said, but none of his business. He had no right standing up saying that to me like that in front of those people. And he shot the guy, and that's what put him away, and for forever.
He killed him.
Oh yeah, shot him right in front of everybody.
God.
But they did everything in front of people. They didn't care. They ran the East London was a different place when those guys were running it. Like there was no crime there that that they didn't control. You understand? Yeah. And they watched out for their manners. You wouldn't think of robbing a car or breaking into a house or harming anybody that belonged to them. You did a bad mistake, boy.
Yeah.
That was a bad mistake. And the Nashes ran North London, and Richardson's ran South London with a guy named Joey Pyle and some people, and they were all involved in boxing, and we were all friends. And London was a great city. My God, you'd be up all night long partying. And even when I did Superman, the clubs were there.
Yeah.
Morton's was a great club at the square, and great entertainment. Every group, the Bee Gees, everybody went in there and sang. There was a club after hours club downstairs. It was brilliant. There was you had a lot of fun in England at that time. And London was a fun city. And then the shit started happening. It was sad, people started carrying guns and shooting people, and you had a lot of immigration came in and changed a lot of complexions of the city. And London's a whole different city than it was back in the 60s and 50s and even part of the 70s. It was wow. Paddington was different. It was a whole different. The shopping, what the heck was the name of the street? It was oh my God. You had all the vegetables, fruit and vegetables, fish, meat.
The markets, and not Camden
Yeah.
Market.
Oh my God, that's terrible. I can't remember that. That was run by Lenny Kane, who was. I mean, it was just so controlled, and it was just, you could walk all over the place. You could walk anywhere in the city, and people. I mean, the only place you wouldn't walk around was Brixton, but nobody ever went to Brixton anyways. Everything was in Mayfair, and I mean, there were clubs everywhere. It was just, it was a lot of fun. It was a fun city. Really, really was a fun city. Georgie Best was a good friend of mine, probably one of the greatest soccer players that ever played the game.
Yeah.
And George had a club up in Manchester. My God, people wrapped around the block to get in that place. Then he had a club in the West End. George was a character. He quit soccer when he was like 28 years old. And I said, George, why did you give up? He said, Jack, he had won every accolade you could think of. And he said, I don't want people to see, he was a bad drinker. George was crazy. It's a party animal. And he didn't want people to see that part of him. And just, it was a trip. George was funny. He came to America. And in America, they were just starting with soccer. And there was a guy down in Texas with a ton of money. And he wanted to put a soccer team together. And most of the soccer players in America were headers. They would hit the ball with their head more than their feet, And I knew this guy from Texas because I boxed in Houston and stuff. And I had friends in Texas. And he said, I'd love to get a team put together. And I said, well, let me talk to George Best. But George was living in Hermosa Beach at the time. And I said, get a handful of guys. And this guy, he's got an open checkbook. You can make a lot of money. They could bring some players from your era over here, and you guys will walk away with the title in the first couple of years, because nobody could kick the ball the way you guys, control it with your feet. I mean, I saw George one time leave 5 people in the midfield trying to take the ball away from him. He took it with his heel over his shoulder. God, George was a trip. I don't know if you ever seen him play. I mean, you're quite young. I don't know if you ever saw George play, but I mean, forget Beckham and them guys. George was a one man. George was unbelievable, and he had a couple other players that played with him. Manchester was a hell of a team. And then George played with Northern Ireland, and George was a trip. But I made this deal for him. I said, this guy in Texas will pay you a lot of money. And there's some people out here in LA had a team they were putting together, and they took him into Beverly Hills and got him drunk and gave him a few chicks. And he signed a contract when he was drunk. And then he hid from me. He was scared I was going to break his neck. I said, George, are you crazy? You signed for like 700,000. You could have had a couple million from this guy, and he would have brought a half dozen guys over, and you guys could have won a title without it, hands down. Oh, he said, I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing. I said, you're a dumbass. I said, he was George. George was a good kid. I like George a lot. His son's a nice kid.
Yeah.
George was a funny bastard. But he had some great ball players that could play the game. Soccer was enjoyable to watch. Like I said, the George Best was a better player than Pele. That's how good he was. And Pele told me that himself.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I met Pele when we were doing the Superman thing over in Washington, D.C., and Pele was there. And I asked him, I said, what did you think of George Best? He said, the greatest soccer player I ever saw play the game. I said, but they say that about you. He said, nah. He said, George had the whole game. George could do, he was offensive, defensive. George had it all. And he was a great player.
Yeah, he was indeed. Just seeing clips of him on TV, you realize how great he was.
Oh, what he could do with his feet was scary.
Mm.
I'll tell you something. It really was scary. What George could do. I watched George carry a ball all the way down and just boom. I mean, defy goalies to try and block him. He would make shots that just defied people.
Oh yeah.
George was a trip.
Yeah.
But he loved the game. You know, he loved soccer.
Mm.
Just that he couldn't stop drinking, and he loved women.
Yeah.
You know, he just he was a handful. It was fun.
You mentioned that. You mentioned that obviously your gangster family. Your book will be very authentic in a way that we haven't really seen.
My father ran a little company called Murder Inc.
Yeah.
He was the head of Murder Incorporated. They were the enforcing arm of the mafia.
Right.
And they did it well. There was a lot of order in place when they were in place. They ruled with an iron fist.
Mm.
And then one guy put 10 of them in jail when he ran it.
Yeah.
Okay, the guy's name was Abatel, and he went out the window of a Half Moon Hotel in Staten Island the night before he was supposed to go to court against my father.
Wow.
They called him the Flying Angel. He was being protected by the cops 24 hours a day. He was the first witness protection program guy, and they had him in this motel for a couple of years. And he got fat like a little pig and eating. And that's all he did was sit in the hotel room.
Mm.
So when he died, when he went out the window, now you got all these cops watching 24/7. How are you supposed to somebody come in and throw him out the window?
Yeah.
They said, "Oh no, he put sheets together and he climbed down." And they said, "Well, first of all, the guy hit the roof below. He was 20 feet away from the roof, from the wall. So somebody chucked him out the window."
Yeah.
You know, and it was just a whole different kettle of fish in those days, boy.
So
A lot of changes.
So having the actual companies as Murder Inc. was obviously there to set a statement in fear, and it was all about the credibility as much as what they did. I'm guessing.
Yeah, they put the fear of God in people. You know, they were there was no, you know, people used to say to Albert, why didn't you give this guy a second chance? He said, if I show a kindness to these people, they think it's a weakness and they'll take advantage of it. In a couple of years, they'll rat on us. Now, when you were brought into the families, you knew what you were going into. You knew what you were doing. You understand? So if you didn't want to do it, don't ask. Don't do it. If you weren't prepared to go the mile with them, then why get involved in the club?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you turned around and you screwed up, you had to pay the penalty, and the penalties were laid out in front. You were told in front, if you do this, this, or this, and that's death. You're going to die because it won't be tolerated. You understand?
Yeah.
And that's so Murder Inc. was and it was run with an iron fist across the country.
Yeah.
And even in parts of the world, Murder Inc. did things for people. And one guy put 10 of them on death row.
Yeah.
Which was really sad.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to gangster films, you were saying a lot of them aren't that realistic. Is there one or two that you would say, go and see these and this will tell you what it was like? Or is there anything that comes close to what it was like?
Is there any what?
Is there any really good mafia film or gangster films that you would say,
The Godfather is probably the closest.
The closest, yeah.
Godfather is probably the closest, and The Road's Perdition was a good play on a hit guy. How a hit guy worked in his life. But there were guys. Murder Inc. was so well put together. They never used telephones. They sent letters to people. They had people living in different cities, and no one ever. I met a guy one time. This is a true story. I met a guy one time down in um, Arkansas, and he lived in a town, and he was like, he did favors for people, fixing their house, and went to church every Sunday, and was in the community, held a job, went to work every day,
Mhm.
and he would get a letter saying he had to be someplace, and he was up in Chicago taking care of some business, and the FBI went down into the town, and they were trying to say that he wasn't there, and people said, "Are you crazy? He was sitting next to me in church that Sunday. How can you tell me he wasn't in town?"
Mm.
He's like 100 people said that. The guy wasn't even there, but they were so used to him being there
Mm.
and so used to seeing him that they swore he was there.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
FBI was trying to blame a hit on him in Chicago, which he actually did. But when he was back, people swore up and down. They signed affidavits that this guy was in town that day. How could you tell me that he killed somebody? You people crazy or what? Nicest guy you ever meet. God,
Mm.
he fixes my back porch. He does this. He does that. He's a sweetheart of a guy. Well, they had guys like that all over the place.
Mm.
I mean, there were stone killers that had never been caught because they were methodical.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um,
But so it's time to tell the truth about a lot of things, and I think that's what we're endeavoring to do, and I think people are gonna love it. To be honest with you.
oh yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see it. It's just been fascinating to talk to you about all these aspects of it. So I'm sure everybody's going to. It sounds like it can be a real big hit.
Yeah, you should just go on familylegacythenovel.com. It's a
Mhm.
great site. Take a look at it.
I will do that, Jack. That sounds wonderful.
Send me an email, and I'll send you the original manuscript.
Oh, I will do it. That's very kind of you, Jack. Thank you very much.
My
Um,
pleasure.
I'm just going to see if there's any questions we have that we haven't answered from the audience, just as we start to wrap up. We did have one question that came in. What would be your advice for other actors if they were to take on the role of Non in the future? What advice would you give somebody stepping into your character?
Wow. It's the same as I tell every kid that ever comes to me about acting. You know,
Mhm.
first thing I tell them is keep your day job. The second thing is I tell them the same thing Mitchum told me. You know, just take the character on and be yourself. You know,
Mm.
just be you. Take that character and put that character in yourself, and walk down the street like that, and enjoy the world, enjoy the ride. I find acting very easy. I mean, to me, and it's because of Mitchum.
Mm.
And I was very fortunate that camera loved me. Camera either likes you or it doesn't. And you can go and you can look at a guy like Gary Cooper or Brando or Mitchum. If you ever go into a movie and see them in a movie and you walk outside, you're saying, boy, wasn't Mitchum great at that? Or wasn't Brando good at this? Or wasn't Brando good at that? You understand?
Yeah.
The character, it makes no difference what character they played. They were
Mhm.
always knew who they were. And yet there was actors like Bill Holden and a couple other people where they were good actors, but the camera didn't love them as much. And when you come out of a picture and you say, boy, what wasn't he? What's that guy's name? He was really good in that part, but what's his name?
Mm.
You understand
Yeah.
the difference in presence? The whole thing about acting is a word called presence. You
Mm.
either have it or you don't. Either
Yeah.
the camera loves you, and or it just doesn't work. People like Gregory Peck, great. You're talking about great actor, Jimmy Stewart. They had a presence that you couldn't deny.
Mm. Oh, so I was just having a look at some more comments that came through. Clyde said, it's more of a comment he just wants to make. Jack, after all these years, you still share these wonderful stories like it was the first time you've ever been asked about them. It's clear that you love your fans and sharing with us. So I thank you for that. So it's nice comment from Clyde. Thank you, Clyde. Do you have a question from Ian? What do you think made Christopher Reeve the ultimate Superman?
Richard Donner.
Mr. Donner, yeah.
That was Richard Donner's directing, boy.
Hmm.
Richard Donner took that young kid and just he fed him the character of Clark Kent, Superman, and he did a changeover that no one else will ever do again. You'll never. And he had a great look, you know. And Donner brought that out of him and brought that, you know. That was it. If you watch a lot of Christopher's work,
Hmm.
that's the only thing he was never stiff in.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He had
Yeah.
a great flow
Hmm.
with Clark Kent and Superman.
Yeah.
Other pictures, Time People Forgotten All, he was very stiff and you know, in his acting abilities. But in Superman, he just had that relaxed flow. It just like he was Clark Kent, like he was Superman.
Hmm.
You know, had that natural flow in him, which thank God most of the cast had the same thing. The same as the three villains. We worked in harmony. It all worked well with the three of us.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you're right that Superman was made for Christopher Reeve, or you know, he was. There's, I don't think any other actor has got the Clark Kent side and the Superman side perfect. Some have got Superman right or Clark Kent, but to get both together is
That's up to the director, my friend.
yeah.
That's up
Yeah.
to the director to harmonize that. You understand?
Hmm. Yes, it's a magical combination, isn't it, between Donner and Christopher Reeve, as you say. Um, so just to wrap it up, Jack, do you have any what do you have a favorite scene from Superman 2, or any other memory that you want to share of the film?
I do. We had a great time doing that picture. It was there's so many great stories involved in that in the filming of it. When you work with people for 3 years, you become a family, you know,
Yeah.
and you just the harmony of working with Donner was brilliant.
Hmm.
I mean, it made going to work like it was a cakewalk. You know, you loved going to work. You know, and I loved the character. I had a lot of fun doing it. You know, because they let me do it my way, and I
Yeah.
did this child mannerism thing,
Hmm.
and Donner loved it. I mean, you know, when I was burning a hole in the side of the truck and I was jumping with joy because my eyes were finally working. You
Hmm.
know, I was doing it in front of a kid, and the
Hmm.
kid, and we were playing like little kids. You know,
Yeah.
and it was just it's the moments that you have and where you know that you're portraying the person the way you really want people to see them. You
Hmm.
know, and that's what makes it work.
Yeah.
That's what makes it work. You know, and it just the scene where I tear the red light off, viciously tear a light off of a cop car, and
Hmm.
then I turn around like a child and hand it to Terrence Stamp, and he like saying, "Oh my God, what are you doing this again?" You know, like this child, you know,
Hmm.
trying to give him a gift. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And his reaction was brilliant to it. I mean,
Hmm.
just the interaction that we had with each other just was a natural deal. It worked extremely well.
Hmm. And my final question for you, Jack, is there a role that you haven't played yet, but you want to, or type of character?
Yeah, I want to do this Jippo Nolan role that McLaughlin did in the picture where the informant, we call it Ballad of a Simple Man,
Hmm.
and it's going to be a hell of a movie. We're going to get ready to gear that up as well in Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it.
Oh, so that sounds really good. Did you have a favorite project in your career, that your favorite role or film?
Probably family, Farewell My Lovely,
Hmm.
Farewell My Lovely because of Mitchum, you know, and I had so much fun doing it.
Hmm.
And it was probably the first mistake I ever made in the industry because the picture really came out well.
Yeah.
And Mitchum was very close to Johnny Carson, and Johnny Carson wanted me to come on his show. And he said, and I met him at the Polo Lounge, and he said, if you do my show, I'll get you nominated for supporting actor because you should be nominated.
Hmm.
But I wasn't playing the game of the publicity and everything. You know what I mean? And I sat there and I looked at him and I said, your show is live, isn't it? He said, yeah. I said, I don't think I could do it. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I'm going to come on your show and you're going to ask me about my father and I'm going to get up and ask you where the men's room's at. He said, you would get up and leave? And I said, yeah. I don't talk about my father and I don't want other people talking about him. And I said, and he said, well, no. He said, we'll put a list of questions together that we're going to ask you and we'll give them to you in front. I said, no disrespect, John. I said, but you're the leading news reporter in the industry. And you have Albert Anastasia's son on your set, and you're not going to ask me about Albert, who nobody's allowed to talk about.
Yeah.
I said, and it was stupid. Mitchum yelled at me, what is wrong with you, man? He said, this is Hollywood. They love that kind of shit. But I had just been off the streets, and I was very, very protective of where I came from and stuff.
Yeah.
And I wasn't into doing if I'd have ran 2 ads in the Reporter and the other the Variety, I would have got nominated. And people told me that. They said, why didn't you pursue it? We thought you were brilliant in the movie. We would have nominated you in a heartbeat. But you have to expose yourself to doing that,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was foolish of me. I should have done it. It was a foolish move. And then another thing I turned down, I turned about 6 pictures down that made Richard Keel's career. I turned down the Bond movie and because I was doing March or Die, and from the March or Die we did Superman, so that wasn't a bad idea.
Yeah.
And then I turned up, but I was doing King Kong, and we had a break of 6 weeks while they went to New York to shoot the ending. And I was sitting by the beach for 6 weeks. I figured, this is cool. I'd sit around and do nothing, just write. I was writing Ballad of a Simple Man, and they offered me a picture called Silver Streak with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder up in Canada, and they came to and Paramount was going to let me go from King Kong to do the picture, and I'd come back and finish shooting King Kong. And I should have done it. It would have been great to work with Wilder and pictures like that. I should have done, and it would made me a homebody at Paramount, and I probably would have got Ballad of a Simple Man done real easy.
Yeah.
Because I'd have been on their good side, But I was a rebellious kid.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. But,
it's my own worst enemy. But
and just we're wrapping it up for Superman 2 and Superman General. What's the best thing about being involved with Superman? Is it something that is a gift that keeps on giving in your life?
It made us iconic actors. I mean, you're talking about an iconic picture. So it takes your career to a whole nother level. You know what I mean? It gave us an incredible, made us iconic actors, and for that I'm very grateful. I mean, I went there to do a job. I did the job, and it worked out well, and the film worked well.
Yeah.
And then 26 years later, they come out with the Donner cut, which is even better than the other one. So, but everybody's minds are fresh in it, and we keep. Little children today love Superman.
Yeah.
They go and watch it all the time. They just so it's great to have done a film that has that kind of memory in people. Here 40 some years later, and people still think it's a great film. So we must have done something right, I guess.
Oh yeah, and I think it will always be these iconic films that will outlive us all. I think they'll always be with us. Do you like watching your films in terms of, because some actors don't like watching them themselves? Does it bother you?
I mean, I don't sit and just constantly watch, but do I enjoy going back and watching them? Yeah, because I just checking my own self to see if I did what I wanted to do. and I did, and I just kicked myself in the butt because I probably should have done a lot other pictures that I turned down.
Yeah.
But I don't cry over spilled milk. You just go forward, and I've got
Yeah.
projects that I'm going to do now, and we're going to get them done before I kick out of here. And it's the family legacy is going to be huge, and we're going to have a lot of fun with it. And to do the Irish picture, that could be an Oscar. It could work very well. I'm looking forward to it. The original Informer won 4 Oscars. I think we can do the same thing with this, what we have. Yeah, if you check Elton John's albums, he recorded a song called Simple Man that I wrote, and it's the music for Ballad of a Simple Man.
All right.
So I want to go to him, and I'm sure he'll do it, is put the music into the film, and it's going to be, things work when they're supposed to work, and I'm a believer of that.
How did you end up writing the song?
There was a writer, Gary Osborne was a writer of Elton's, and he was a really super kid. He and I became good friends, and he needed to give Elton a song. They were doing an album, and he needed to come up with a song for him. And I sat down with him, had him read Ballad of a Simple Man. I said, let's. So we did this song called Simple Man that is about Frankie McPhillips coming from the mountains on a train going into Dublin to die, and he knows he's going to die because he's got consumption, and he's being looked after by the IRA's looking for him. And you see him looking to the mountains, to the city, and he lived like a simple man. It just this was his final ride into his oblivion, and it fits the movie like a glove, and it was just a great song, and it worked out very, very well. And Elton loved it. He recorded it right the first time he heard it. He said, "Yeah, let's do this." We recorded it. It's on one of his albums. It's
yes. So you're hoping that you can use the film and use the music in your upcoming film.
Oh, I believe it. I don't think we'll have a problem. I think because Elton likes, the song worked well for him, and it fits the movie, and we'll be paying him to do it. So no reason not to.
Absolutely.
And it fits. The story is the story of Ballad of a Simple Man. So can't deny that I was involved in writing it.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Jack, for joining us for this wonderful evening, talking about Superman and a whole other manner of topics which we've all very much enjoyed. I hope you've enjoyed it even half as much.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Believe me, man. I hope everybody had a good time.
Oh, yeah, we have. Yeah, we've just had a couple of comments come in. Thank you, Jack and Philip, for this excellent interview. This was fun. Thank you both. Thanks, Jack and Philip, for a very interesting evening. So I think everybody's enjoyed it. We can safely say.
Should have had Sarah here. We'd have had a room.
I did ask, but I think she was a bit busy, so I couldn't. I tried, but I couldn't quite get to her. But maybe next time, maybe we'll do something together for the. There's always anniversaries coming up, isn't there? The Superman and everything.
Yeah, it just keeps on going, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yes, it does indeed, Jack.
Listen, thanks a lot, man. It was a lot of fun. Truly, really was. Send me an email, and I'll send you in fact, I've got your email. I'll send you the original manuscript of Ballad of Family Legacy. You'll like it. You really will like it.
That'd be very kind, Jack. I'll enjoy that. Thank you very much indeed for your.
Take care. Be good. Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye. So I just want to say thank you everybody for joining us. It's been a really great evening. I just wanted to close by just saying that I was speaking to Valerie Perrine, who obviously stars as Miss Tess Marker in the Superman films, and she was saying that the Richard Donner cut is her favourite version of Superman 2 as well. Unfortunately, Valerie does suffer from Parkinson's, so she wasn't able to join us, but she certainly was with us in spirit. And Valerie just wanted me to point out that her new documentary about her life including obviously her more recent struggles with Parkinson's, is actually available now. If you go to valeriethemovie.com, there's information about the documentary, and also about, I think it's also got a GoFundMe page. So people might be interested in that. So just thought I'd mention it. Thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again soon for another event. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.